Oh yeah, here we go for another rock and roll march through the mountain Monday. My second home, a bit moody. It was a bit moody today this morning, but I got going and I started cleaning my room, doing the laundry, and now I'm gonna get some sun. Oh yeah, that always feels so good, when you get a little of that sunshine. It's a bit chillier today than it is, but yeah, we gotta get on that rock and roll 24/7 for the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the truckers, the firefighters, the electricians, the welders, those involved in the production, distribution of food. We're going to my second home, the mountain, Mount Royal. Was a bit moody, but financially stressed and didn't get any calls for work. I decided to do what I do, independent work, rock and roll, and cleaning. And gotta be grateful, thankful for the laundry machine, a laundromat, and that's how we gotta go with that. And here I gotta turn my head, before I cross the street, and I'm so grateful. What a sun! I guess you got enough of my face already. Gonna SUN, the king, the sun. Oh yeah, I feel so good, and now I got a little bit of that good sunshine, and it's always good to get a little bit of sun as much as you can, if you got a little bit of things, and that's something which we have, of course, to be intermittent about and to be taken in as much as we can, before the winter here in Montreal, Hawk Island, N.A.C.W.P, beautiful sky, and yeah, salutations for the firefighters, butchers, bakers, nurses, always for the plumbers, the welders, and you know how it is with this N.A.C.W.P, with my routines, for years and years and years and years. It's pretty much the routine and ritual routines we do have. I'm referring to my community of people who live with this neurodivergence called Asperger's, HFA, high functioning autism. So being that I'm an N.A.C.P, I have these routines, and they kind of seem sometimes kind of rigid, but I'm not totally inflexible, totally resistant to change, or especially with the financial, economic, commercial. That would be something lovely. And here you gotta turn your heads left and right, because sometimes they come, and they can come from both sides. So always strategize. Although there's a way, because that's the pedestrian walk. But you also gotta be insured in yourself, because if you don't, and here I'm just gonna take a few steps, because it says security, independent citizen security. If I take a few steps to the right, 4 steps to the right, and then circumvent in a circle, then it'll be more safe, because the person with a child, I don't know if the relationship, familiar relationship, X, Y, Z, B, C, A, B, C, D, E, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever the case may be. But that's was a bit of aspiness there. I actually calculated a distance and perimeter in my mind. There was flashings of a distance, calculation of distances. These are a bit weird, peculiar ASPI traits and characteristics. I don't call them symptoms, to calculate, for example, in the head certain distance and the speed, my marching steps, and that's what I calculate. For example, here the fellow citizens are coming, so I'm just gonna take a few steps, 4 steps to the right, and then 4 steps to the left, so that basically I'm doing a semicircle for them. And of course, here in the Publik, we have to stay to the right and the left, just like driving. But when there's youth and children involved, I always do it myself, because it's a pleasure, to not kind of intervene, and just to let them freely roam. And I'm pretty wide, got that backpack, so I got that pretty width, and I'm pretty wide on the shoulders. So yeah, today really, besides financial stress, look at that branch. That branch really fell, got that rock and roll on the ground there, fell. And they got a bit of that rock and roll with it, and they fell on the ground. And got a dog park here, Montreal, H-A-W-K, and 2 big branches, on the go. And that is sometimes what we gotta be doing with that, and that's sometimes what we have to be doing with that to get on the go, and also something when we have to get doing on that rock and roll 24/7, So here we're gonna go on the sides here. We're gonna transpose ourselves by crossing the street in a vertical manner, and of course exactly calculate the parameter, of course, whatever the case may be, the distance, and of course in the situation where we are now is the financial stress which affects us most of the time. That is something which we have, of course, to interject. But here we got some of these. I guess we can get some of those, and Get some of these to make, you know. Yeah, I'm gonna get some of them. Gonna bag them up and get a little bit of those. So we're gonna make them tomorrow morning and have it for the noon. I'm always grateful, thankful for those, you know. It's something which we have to, of course, have ourselves. And yeah, these I can actually peel atop the mountain because they're biodegradable. So I'm gonna take 4 for me, 4 for my anonymous friend. They look very big and thick, and let's do that. Let's peel them at the top of the mountain. Let's do that. Gotta get it on that. And see on that 3. And then we got a little bit of that 4. And I got 4 more. 1, 5, 6, 7, and gotta be a little bit on that 8, you know. And that's about it for that. And now there's plenty left over. So now we got added backpack in the back, you know. Added backpack, you know, there to get it on the go, you know, to just squish it in the backpack. And grateful, thankful. The farmers, I don't know if they're Canadian, but Canadian corn or what have you, maybe they're not. And just those, and thank you for the donation for these, you know. See, somebody had left, those gotta be clean, but now you got plenty of corn there. You got about 44 left, and there we go. We're gonna get it in, and that's always a nice dimension when we have, you know, to interject, and we have, of course, to get a little bit of that foundation for us to be able, of course, to meditate and take a little bit of that food if we can. And of course, always got to be a little bit of that gratitude. I'm gonna just go. That's it for today. It's the corn for me, and gonna go into the sun. Gonna go for the mountain. We're gonna be grateful, and that's a full fridge, and somebody's serving themselves there. And I saw a cantaloupe, but I said if he's gonna take it, he's gonna take it, and first come, first serve. And I'm always grateful, thankful, and I see people, of course, stacking up on food and food security. You know, food security is super important. It starts with the farmers, the bakers, the butchers, the nurses, the doctors, the firefighters, the plumbers, the electricians, all the truckers on the road. Imagine now how many trucks are on the road now. And just that corn, just to come over to me, in my space, in my possession, probably traverse from a big cornfield. And we're gonna do the geopolitics of corn, because you know how it is with this N.A.C.W.P. It's 24/7 geopolitics, 24/7 rock and roll, 24/7 fitness, dancing, and of course, dancing is my favorite sport. Rock and roll, you know, rock and roll. That's what I do. And sports and fitness, dancing being my favorite sport. And now gotta get a little bit of that backpack. Look at those beautiful flowers there. Wow, that just quadrupled my smile. And thank you for the corn. That is something good, and it's always good to have, you know. I took 4 pieces for me. 4 pieces for me, for my anonymous friend. So I'm just gonna peel them at the top of the mountain once we reach the mountain, because of course the peels are biodegradable, you know. So I'm always so excited about that, and to boil some corn is always fun. So thank you. And the fridge was full, but there was somebody else, of course, who was serving, taking food from the other fridge, because there's 2 there in the corner. So just saw the fridge was full and saw a big cantaloupe, but hey, let them have it. And of course, first come, first serve, and that's how we roll. I saw some lettuce, so it was full of veggies, and this beautiful yellow field just quadruples my smile. Quadruples my smile, you know, because we gotta share, and that's to share, you know. With me, sometimes, of course, I take, but I don't take all, because I gotta leave some for others, you know. It's tough times, and people are stressed, financially stressed. A lot of people, not just myself, you know, but myself is mostly due to my N.A.C.W.P condition, you know. It's a neurological condition, and it's just we're different. Aspies we perceive. I'm gonna discuss a bit on Asperger's now that I'm on the topic. It's just I gotta give a shout out again for those who planted these yellow flowers. Just quadruple my smile, quadruples. If you look at that, rock and roll. I love it. I love those yellow. Yeah, that's always good, man, to have a little bit of yellow when I go. It always embellishes my state of mind and beautification of the city. It's always a public-private partnership with me, and of course my ideas, theories, propositions, which I've been presenting for years and years and years now, you know. I've been quite at it for a long time, you know. for the work quite a bit, a long time now. And of course, just like I had Asperger's since, I guess, whenever, which is a neurological mental divergent condition, and I had been diagnosed. I'm not officially diagnosed. I'm part of that half, 50% of people with Asperger's are unofficially diagnosed. So although I've been diagnosed by several individuals and people and citizens who have, of course, experience in the healthcare system, and looks like there's a black, there's a little bit of white on it on the top. Quite cute there, standing, just relaxing, and in the corner, a beautiful black cat with a little bit of white stripe on it, like a white stripe just in the middle. That was quite something, in the middle of the neck. So I've been diagnosed since about 9 years ago, independently by several individual citizens who have experience in the healthcare system, and with people who have autism. There's some work with autistics and with Asperger's. Look at that beautiful sky with Aspies. And so, of course, our condition is not an illness. That's where we must begin. That's where I must begin the discussion. It's not a disease. It's not a disease, not a disease, not a disease. And I'm not a disease, and we're not a disease, and it's not a disease, right? So, of course, the point is that, of course, it's not a disease. And, of course, that's where we start. And where we have to draw the line is when designations, appellations, or characterizations of Asperger's as evil, as bad, as negative, as malicious, that's where we also have to draw the line in many ways, because it's not evil, it's not bad, it's not malicious, and it's not negative. It is different, but not bad, negative, or malicious, right? And we don't have symptoms. I don't use the word symptoms. It's actually characteristics. So these characteristics make us, of course, inclined. These characteristics, of course, make us inclined to our special inclinations. And that's those special inclinations where we are, of course, where we are involved with all the activities which we do, kind of in a ritualistic-like manner, ritual-like routines. And we have what's called special interests. And those special interests are also called obsessive interests. But the word, I don't use obsessive because obsessive, see, is a word for a neurotypical who doesn't have these same. So our brains, Asperger's brain, has these variations. I call them mutations, right, at a microscopic nano level. And so we process information, especially social information, and social non-written rules can be more difficult for us Aspies to proceed and integrate in our daily life, and the way we interact socially can be very different, right? And keep in mind that there's not a lot of Aspies. There's less than, the population who's diagnosed officially is 0.44%. 0.44%, but that means that if it's only half, that 0.44 double, that's 0.88%. So not even 1% of the population has Asperger's, also known as HFA, right? So that's where we have to keep that in mind. You know, one has to keep that in mind whenever we discuss Asperger's and what it is and what it's not. There has been a lot of progress in the 21st century, in this century, compared to the 20th century. A lot of this stigma. There was still a lot of stigma. That's why myself, I didn't want to accept it for years and years and years, because at least since about 9 years ago, I've been told. I said no, until about 3.5 years ago, after 6 years of having been told, 7 years maybe, having been told that I have Asperger's. But then I finally said yes, it makes sense. And thank you, my anonymous friend who gifted me 2 books on autism, and one book specifically was loaned. One book specifically was loaned to me, relating to appreciating Asperger's syndrome. So that is a specific book, which of course relates only to Asperger's. Look at those beautiful yellow flowers. So that book, of course, was related, of course, only to Asperger's. But those 2 other books were inclusive, several chapters on Asperger's, because it merged with autism. So they merged in 2013, 2014. They merged, they fused together. So now we have them both together, kind of like a fusion, right? So of course, now we have to discuss a little bit. I don't want to take 3 hours on my march and discussing just Asperger's and autism, but just, of course, to discuss it from this manner of perspective, just a general manner, because it's important, because, of course, I have Asperger's, and I'm gonna go by the flower. So, what is it and what's not? It's not a disease. not a disease. Beautiful flowers, look at that. On aspies, we can definitely appreciate beautiful flowers like this. Some aspies will actually, if an aspie's favorite or special interest, aka obsessive interest, is flowers or farming, that aspie would know so many things, you know. That aspie would know so many things. So many things about all these flowers here, you know. All these flowers, you know so much, especially these ones. Well, I don't know them that much, but he would actually know the designation, the biological, you know, designation or the original names in Latin with the kingdoms and the flowers. Look at those. See, wow, aren't they just gorgeous? Wow, they're just, to me at least, they're really beautiful. So we're gonna go in a zigzag a bit, and we're gonna pass by these yellow ones here because they always quadruple my smile when I pass by them, you know. Wow, these are really nice flowers here. Love. Look at that yellow, gotta dance with me. And of course, so back to Asperger's. It is a neurological difference and dimension, of course, of the difference dimension where we are now, of course, is the neurological diversion where we are, of course, to be included in all the spheres of the integration of oral faculties and to be integrated with you, the majority of the population. You are neurotypicals. Us, we're neurodivergents, and we have to build bridges, right? And how to build these bridges of understanding. That's why I'm really, in every video, I kind of take a 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, sometimes 25 minutes on Asperger's just itself, because I suffered, I struggled, and there's no medication for Asperger's because it's not a disease. We have to manage our characteristics, our traits, not symptoms. Again, I don't use the word symptoms, and neither should really, I don't use the word symptoms. The word that I use, of course, is traits and characteristics. So, of course, traits and characteristics is what I use. Traits and characteristics, you know, not symptoms, not symptoms. And that is just something which we have, of course, to do. To use traits and characteristics rather than symptoms per se, because symptoms again is more for a malady, for an illness, for a disease, a mental illness, mental disease, you know, a mental illness or mental disease, or it could be, of course, generic disease. It doesn't have, of course, to be only a mental disease. It could be any other disease which, of course, incorporates. So all the disease which can be incorporated thereafter, it can be, of course, related to the Asperger condition in many ways, in many senses. So that sense, of course, which we have now, of course, in the domain is, of course, these characteristics and these appellations which we have today, of course, to enumerate. So we have certain traits and characteristics, I'm not going to enumerate all, but which can seem odd, weird, bizarre, odd, and strange, such as the way we discuss certain topics. Turn your heads left or right. Here when you cross the street, always got to turn your head left or right. You got a little bit of arbeit to do and a little bit of environmental work there to do, and you got a little bit of football. What's that? I don't know. Just got to get a little bit of football number 56. I love football. This must be from the 90s. 56. That's in French. 56. So an Aspie who knows everything about football would know. Dancing is my favorite sport, although I love football, but ask me more 49er questions. 49er questions, you know. Niners, one of my favorites. Well, it is my favorite, and then the Raiders, and whatever we got, and gotta get on that go, you know. The appellation, of course, of the conquered myth and where we are now. So back to what I was saying was that we have these traits and characteristics, and we have to build bridges, whether we build small bridges, medium-sized bridges, large bridges, or extra large bridges, you know. Within those 4 categories of bridges, I'm just saying those 4 categories generally, they can have sub-categories, but the size of the bridges sometimes can differ in size, right? We gotta build small, medium, extra large, large or extra large, large first, then extra large, if you want to put them in order, right? The 4. So we gotta build bridges. Sometimes the bridges are small, sometimes they're medium sized, sometimes they're large, and sometimes they gotta be extra large, because sometimes there's more understanding to be achieved and more information and knowledge achieved about and between aspies and non-aspies. But I don't have antagonistic feelings, I don't have resentful feelings versus or against the neurotypical. No, you're my brothers and sisters, and we gotta work together, and we're a big family here in Canada, United States, across the 63 always for the 63. Let our empire rise and be, and we gotta, of course, gotta get doing with that, of course, always where we are now. Although financially stressed, aspies, we have certain problems, which I'm going to discuss in a bit, but just, of course, to give an overall general aperçu of the dynamics, the characteristics, and what Asperger's is and what Asperger's is not. So it's not a disease. We have to build bridges, because like I said, myself at least, although I suffered and lost employment, and the problem for Aspies, let's face it, we have a very, very, very high unemployment rate for Aspies. 80% of Aspies are unemployed, plus, 80 plus. That's 4 out of 5. Just think about that for 1 second. Just take a minute, actually, not a second, would be too superficial and not cover enough in-depthness for you want to realize the gravity and the injustice of this. Right? Because Aspies, we're not bad, we're not malicious, we're not negative, we're not evil. We might be perceived by some as such and characterized as such because we have these differences, and yes, we have empathy. We have empathy and compassion. It's just that we show it. Beautiful yellow flowers. We show it more by action rather than verbal consolation, at least myself as an individual Aspie. You know, and to give you a concrete example, sometimes you look at those beauties right there. Aren't they just beautiful? Yeah, to me they are. I just love them so much. These ones are, wow, gorgeous garden, and that mixture of those two, they are creamy. That makes me think a little bit of ice cream. So it can be a perception that there's the lack of empathy and compassion for our Aspies, that we lack those traits, which we don't. It's just that we show them mostly, at least myself as an individual sovereign Aspie citizen, an individual sovereign citizen who lives with Asperger's. It's just that I wouldn't necessarily, sometimes, just because our brain is different, we might not necessarily, for example, console verbally, or say I'm sorry to hear that or something like that. But if we can do something to alleviate or to help or to support, to take away some pain, some suffering, or to help by bringing some pleasure or some relief. And Aspies, we are as eager and as charitable as the most of the top, if not most, if not more even, if not more generally. Okay, we're a tiny minority, so being that we are a tiny minority is something which we have, you know, being that we're a tiny minority. This tiny minority, of course, has to be considered, of course, in the situation where we are now. So being that we are a tiny minority, now we gotta cross the streets. That's why we got the sign to cross the streets with that. And that is just something where we're gonna go straight in. And sometimes we're gonna turn towards the sun, you know, to get a little bit of sunshine with that. And that's what it is with that rock and roll. So that is, of course, all the characteristics which we have in the situational context, is that we might be perceived, at least generally or as an individual, as not having compassion. You know, so the idea of not having compassion is counterbalanced by the fact that we do have compassion. It's just that we have it in a different way. So we show it in a different way, in a different manner, where we show it by action rather than by verbal consolations, especially if it's not directly our implication to cause that problem. Or, for example, you might say that, you know, I'm this and that, or I'm financially stressed, because that's what I am now, just financially stressed. Or you would say I'm financially stressed, or I'm sore. And Aspie, like myself, at least, if you're a friend, at least I don't have many friends, but I wouldn't necessarily say I'm sorry to hear that, or I'm just gonna get out of the way, or just say verbal consolation, or just say verbal consolation. Verbal consolation. Right, but I would offer, okay, if you're sure, you want a massage, you want to rub, you got a cream, I could rub your neck, your back, I'm part of the LGBTQ community, I guess, if you know, whatever the case may be, being part of the LGBTQ community, I might say, of course, your ass, your bottom, I'm androgynous, pansexual, whatever the case may be. So, of course, all these appellations is how we perceive the world differently. So we might, of course, necessarily just offer something if we can offer. If you are in the position to, because of course we are not necessarily in the position all the time, but that is just something which we are. Now, of course, if I would be in a financial position, I would also be charitable enough, because these are tough economic, financial, commercial times for many. But I don't. I paid my rent. I paid my electricity bill. Though I got a bill left to pay. That bill left to pay is my phone bill, which is, I'm going to get to the phone bill soon. So that triple bills, today we're the 8th. Today is the 8th of September, right? So the full moon feast continues for 3 days, and I always like a little bit of that smell here with that. A little bit of smells, a little bit of that good smell. So of course that is just the appellation where we are now, to be on the continuity, to be doing on the go on the left and the right. And here we gotta turn your heads left and right, because sometimes the brakes malfunction. The citizen driver might press the accelerator, although there's a stop. You might, of course, miss it. Citizen driver by mistake can press the accelerator instead of the brake. Of course, all this domain and appellation where we are, blah blah, to get doing on the go is something which I gotta salute. The construction workers, truckers, the bakers, the nurses, those in the daycares who change some diapers, the plumbers, the electricians, the construction workers, all those public workers also, because civilization is a privilege. So that is just where we are now. Today, of course, to take in and of course be aware of this difference is a constant thing which we got to get doing on that. So that, of course, difference comes, of course, from the sensitivities of where we are now. So, of course, those sensitivities where we are now, to get it on the go now, So all that plurality of differences, it's a mixture, it's a composition, right? And you have different frames of different levels of intensity. So sometimes for different aspects of intensity, the aspects of intensity what might be in the consequential artist that we are, of course, now plurally involved to get it on the go, So that difference is something where, of course, we are concomitant to become better at building these bridges. So if we are to become better at building these bridges, we're not going to be able to build all bridges all the time, to build all the time bridges, but we're going to build those bridges small, medium, and of course extra large and large, where we're going to be extra large. But it requires, of course, an analysis, because sometimes their analysis might be, of course, concomitant to whatever the situation is. The plurality of course, all the environments where we are now is, of course, something which we have in the discussion of all the sentimentality has to be, of course, put into a relegation, in these matters, because there has to be building of bridges and solutions, For example, solution is in reference to the problems that aspects we encounter most, which is 3 main problems. We have a very high suicidal and depression rate among the aspect communities. Now, what got me out of being depressed and suicidal, was crossing Canada coast to coast, ocean to ocean. Was crossing Canada coast to coast, ocean to ocean. So, of course, crossing Canada coast to coast, ocean to ocean in 2017. I'm celebrating 8 years this September. So mid-September, that's going to be around now. So now between mid-August and 20th of September, me and my anonymous friend, we embarked in 2017, summer 2017, between August 11th and September 20th. So about 45-day period span of the summer till the end of the summer. We came back one day before, and we had embarked on crossing Canada coast to coast, ocean to ocean. First in August 2017, we went into BC, British Columbia, Vancouver, and then flag spotted. When I spot the flag, I gotta show mine. Don't ask me when I got that Canada tatted up there. Probably decades ago, Probably 25, 22, 20 years ago. 20 years ago, 25 years ago. But Got that Canada tatted up, so I'm always wearing that flag. I wish I could buy my anonymous friend a house here. A house by the river best. With a whipping willow. Yeah, I definitely would buy my anonymous friend a house, you know. Thank you again for those 3 books. 2 were gifted. Does that say R.A. rah? Makes me think of retrograde amnesia, which I have trouble remembering my life prior to like February 2014. Before that date, I used to live here on the island of Montreal in a small underground basement. I didn't even have a kitchen. The kitchen was in a tiny small room. It was like a small prison cell. I guess I served my time, you know, in a small prison cell. And of course the bathroom of course was something which we gotta get plural about. The bathroom, of course, we gotta get it on the go. And the bathroom, of course, we gotta... That is something where, of course, the bathroom was built without a bathtub. And it was small, like a tiny small prison cell. I always say, kind of like I served my time, you know. I don't know how long was I there, and I don't know if I was a junkie. I don't know if I did hard drugs, you know. Maybe I did hard drugs before February 2014, or maybe I was an alcoholic, you know. I remember being viciously attacked by surprise. I still got to go retrieve. Maybe tomorrow, Wednesday, I still gotta go retrieve, man. I still gotta go retrieve, you know. I still gotta go retrieve the archives from the Jewish General Hospital. I was attacked. A vicious surprise attack in the metro, and I was hit in the head. Back. And of course I was hit in the head, you know, and that's what I was hit in the head with that. So being that I was hit in the head, I fell on the concrete, and then I was bloodied up, and under the Jewish General Hospital. I went to the Jewish General Hospital. I just had a dislocated right arm, right shoulder, and it was cracked back, you know, It was cracked back by the doctors, and I was put on some meds. So I gotta retrieve. I hope they still have it in the archives. Probably, because it wasn't been. It's I don't know exactly. 2014, maybe 2013. I don't know. I just have trouble remembering my life, you know. But that's a long time ago, though. I have a very good memory, super good memory of the past 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Just 11 plus a few months. Then February 2014 is like a effing blackout, man. You know. I have a high school diploma. I graduated high school. I had some college, so I dropped out of college. Aspies, the problem is Aspies are way more likely to drop out of higher education because of the problems, because we have trouble maintaining friendships, friends. It's hard for Aspies to make friends, and long-lasting relations for Aspies is very difficult. It requires patience, it requires work. We can be strange, weird, awkward, bizarre, but not bad, not evil, not malicious, not malevolent, not negative. No. We have our strengths, that's the thing. We have our strengths. And of course, these strengths are usually revolved around our special interest, aka obsessive interest, and which I'm going to get into, because that's how we roll: sports, fitness, and rock and roll, and geopolitics. And that's what we gotta go get in with that, you know. That's what the drill is, and that's what we got, you know. Now, of course, in the ablation of all the difficulties, I'm gonna finish on Asperger's, and then, because I predicted what's happening now, in 2019, I have proof. I have the video online. I predicted what's happening now in a general manner. Of course, not every detail by detail, but generally I predicted what's happening now. I'm gonna go check those yellow flowers and then go hydrate, and I'm gonna go towards the sun. So generally, yeah, so that's the problem. So whatever, my memory aside, maybe sometimes it comes back, maybe trauma, maybe I was, you know, sometimes when you drink for a few years, when you're alcoholics, when you get off of the booze, or you get off of the dope or trauma to the head, I guess I got PTSD or not, PTSD. But I live with my scars. I'm androgynous pansexual. I've been open in the years since I can remember, you know, being, as it's called, out of the closet. And wow, I'm so glad I took the turn here. Just quadruple my smile. Just those yellow flowers are just putting in the go, and that is just something which we have, and it's something which we got, all the satisfaction of all our verbosities where we are, to get drilling with the knowledge and the knowing and XYZ, the loving moments where we are in the environment that we are in the public. So I got added responsibilities, duties, and obligation. I'm somebody, I do not like violence myself. I don't like violence, I don't like violence. I do not like violence. I don't like violence. I lived it. I was attacked, and vicious surprise attack. A vicious surprise attack. Was hit in the head, fell. I thought, I guess they tried to take me out. I guess whoever it was, and tried to take me out several times. And I guess I'm still alive today, And this aliveness is also something which. Also, I gotta say, I survived COVID, That's why I urge y'all to please keep the protocols of COVID. Keep the protocols of COVID. The hygienic protocols that were installed during COVID, I urge you all to keep as much as you can. I know financially it's a burden, can be for some, especially since in the past 3.5 years during COVID, we've seen worse and worse and worse and worsening economic financial matters. And of course, those worsening economic financial matters have been, of course, involved for us, myself included. The problem with Aspies is we lose, of course, employment often. We lose employment. So these are now the three main problems which we have, intermittently. Intermittently, we have those main problems that we got, and that is something which we have, of course, to do, of course, in the Appalachia where we got, to get on the go. And that is just, of course, the life-affirming matters where we are, of course, involved to be conscientious about, conscientious about. And all this has to be imparted in a way where we have this work to do, and the work is to build bridges. Whether small bridges, medium bridges, large bridges, or extra large bridges. So these bridges have to be built, right? Because I don't have antagonistic feelings, I don't have antagonistic feelings towards the majority of the population. You are considered neurotypicals. 99.56%, 99.56%, you're neurotypical. And the neurotypical population is, of course, something where we have, of course, to ensconce. And, of course, the neurotypicals, you're neither, to us, to me at least, bad, evil, or negative. We might have misunderstandings and we have work to do together. But of course, it's something which we have to build, the bridges. It takes an effort, sometimes more effort, because if we got to build the extra large ones, just like drinking an extra large coffee or eating an extra large fry requires more effort. So more effort is required to build these bridges. Small, medium, large, or extra large, right? Those 4 categories, just like when you order a coffee or a fry, you might order in any of those sizes. You might order old school, paying cash, or a little bit of new school with a credit card or with a debit card, or newer school, latest with a phone. And if you got those apps, and my ideas, theories for the future, this public-private partnership that I'm going to get into. So now I'm just going to finish on Asperger's. The 3 main problems are for Asperger's. The 3 main problems are the lack of friends. The lack of friends, The lack of friends. The lack of friends. The solution is, for me, friends with benefits only. The solution for me is friends with benefits only. Friends with benefits. That's the solution. I don't want to waste your time. Don't waste my time. We won't waste each other's time. You're 18 plus. You want a LOV. You're black. You're white. You're rainbow. You're a man. You're a woman. Being that I am part of the androgynous pansexual community, don't waste my time. I won't waste your friends with benefits only. So that is one of the solutions. The other one of the solutions, of course, can be concomitantly vis-a-vis the employment and the labor. So, of course, we Aspies are at 80% unemployment, plus more than 80%. More than 80% unemployment. More than 80% unemployment. So we stand, of course, on being more than 80% unemployed. That's 4 out of 5. That is totally unacceptable. That unacceptability, of course, has to come with certain responsibilities, duties, and obligations, because the workspaces, let's face it, most of them are actually built for neurotypicals, right? They're inclusive of neurodivergence more and more, especially in the 21st century, but due to our difference, of course, of how we are, how we communicate is, of course, something which we have, you know? So that is just something where we are. So now that's why I say, of course, that friends with benefits only, so that I don't waste your time, you don't waste mine, and we do not waste each other's time. Or pledge your allegiance, legion, support my work. Actually, since I'm neither sexually frustrated or no longer suicidal and depressed, that's a long time ago for me. If you want to waste somebody else's time, just waste somebody else's time. Friends with benefits, massage therapy sessions, I can trade, I can exchange, but I wish I could afford one because I live a very active lifestyle and have been so ever since 2017 when I got out of being depressed and suicidal. Since I got out of being depressed and suicidal in 2017 when I started working out, I lost between 80 and 93 pounds. But the employment, of course, and the business is something which we have to work on, because, of course, the workplace is made for the neurotypical. So we have these problems. And of course, these problems can be more or less good. So the communication style can seem awkward. Usually I say about 10 or 20 seconds because there's rust. So of course there could be rust there, and of course the rust can come into the body. So if the rust comes into the body, that's why you always take a few seconds for the rust to clear up. That's how I count, about 20 seconds.
Yeah, well, it's used a lot. If it was only used a little bit, I would worry more about that.
Yeah.
And rust in these pipes, I don't think it's actually possible.
Because there's public works at the corner.
Yeah.
You have to test it. You have to test it. Do what thou wilt for you, you know.
If that's the thing that gets me finally, that'll be ironic.
How so?
Everything else missed me and that got me.
Oh, I see. I understand what you mean. I got it. Right. Right, right. I still do about 10, 20 seconds though, but I understood what he means now, because he said if that is gonna get me, that means the rust. That's a lot of things try to get him, I guess. And sometimes actually we require a little bit of clarification, you know, because of our brains, the brains being different, you know. So I am hypervigilant, you know, but I don't like violence. But this hypervigilance, sometimes it makes, of course, of the awkwardness, of course, where we are. You know, this awkwardness is something where we have, of course, to be and appellated in the societal and awkward of the societal movements where we are, of course, to get it doing, you know, to get on that appellation and to be, of course, on the sides, you know.
And then I can try.
That's how we are, and that's how we do, you know. So, yeah, it's just an N.A.C.W.P characteristic, and that is something which we have to get it to do, you know. And we have to live with it, and we have to get a little bit of that circle there, see. So that is, of course, the N.A.C.W.P trait. So we got to build those bridges in order to have full employment, and that's what it is. That's what I got to get doing to get it to build it up, and that's just how we have now to do, you know. That's where we go. So these bridges, like I said, they have to be built from both sides, you know, just like you have the other bridges which have to be built, you know. It's something where we have, of course, to be building on the go, you know. So this, yeah.
Do not repost it.
So that is, see, sometimes we just don't get certain things. Like was the case, it took me a few seconds, you know, to get it, you know, to get it. But at least I got it. If that gets me, fellow cousin, uncle, whatever. So I consider all this your family, you know. But so if that gets me, that will be ironic. So I got it. I guess me too, I guess, in many ways, but I don't know, I just always count 10, 20 seconds, and I recommend people do it. If you don't want, you start drinking right away, but because there could be some rust, in my opinion, there could be some residue, you know. I know we have a good quality, but if there's work somewhere, and you know, there's our pipes we got a mass public works to do. I mean, now we're building more and more in the past year, last year, 2 years, 3.5 years, but for decades and decades, our public infrastructure has been underfunded and neglected, let's face it. Most of the infrastructure is from the 20s, from more than 44 years ago, from the 70s, 60s, and 80s, but here, see how my brain works? Now, of course, I see this highway and these bridges, and my brain automatically focuses on switches and does a calculation which integrates geopolitics, meaning that I know that those trucks and cars are going south to the U.S. border. We have the trade war, and some of them are going north. So that's north, or the sun, and they're going south. So now I know that there's trucks and truckers. Gotta salute the firefighters. Slow down. You gotta slow down. Slow down your car. When you hear the ambulances, when you hear the fire trucks, when you hear this, slow it down and look to the left, look to the right, and look to the left, look to the right, look around you, slow down your car, slow down your driving, and salute the firefighters. They need a massage therapy session more than yours truly, you know. They need a massage therapy more than yours truly, you know. So that is something which we have, of course, to consider, you know. They need a massage therapy more than me. So please, Wall Street billionaires, finance the public workers such as the firefighters, and of course those who pick up the garbage, the compost every day, and see that truck is going north. The other one's going south. So now across all the 63, the 10 provinces, the 50 states and the 3 territories, there's a XYZ, A, B, C, D, E, 1, 2, 3, 4 amount of bacon, cheese, milk, bread, lettuce, beans, tomatoes, cucumbers, avocados, bananas, coffee, etc., 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 etc. Now there's, at this point in time now, for this specific point in time, these seconds that I take these steps, all across the 63, there's a definite mathematical number that exists in real time, right? There's X amount in real time now, all across the 63, the 10 provinces of Canada, North America. It's in kilos, pounds, or of course, if it's liquid, it's liters or gallons, right? If it's liters, because it could be milk, can be in liters or gallons. So right now, and this is the aspiness, when I crossed that, I had a flash. Of course, it's in the mind how it works, and I put it, of course, incrementally in how much milk there is. I can only do an estimation. How much milk there is, how much coffee, how much bacon, how much romaine lettuce, or red lettuce, 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 you know. Not lettuce dance, but lettuce as in the edible lettuce. How much it is now across North America. Because at this point in time, there's a specific amount. So let's say from every hour, those trucks that reach their destination, they're out of the count. I'm specifically referring to those in circulation, which have a potential, of course, of course, I have a potential to be, of course, and I guess and a potential to be, you know, have a potential to be, and have a potential to be, of course, which are in circulation. So how much is expressed in kilos, of course, kilos or whatever the case may be, in kilos, most possibly. Well, depending on what it is, right? Let's see what it says here. In kilos. In kilos, you know. Kilos, pounds, or whatever the whatever the quantity. So it's a quantification. I'm not discussing quality, I'm discussing quantity, because there are variants in quality, right? It could be different types of rice, bacon, cheese, romaine lettuce, or whatever the case may be, right? So it differs, it varies, the quality variations. There's a variation in the quality, but the quantity is exact. Is exact. So it is exact right now. So that exactitude is a precise number, right? Across the 63, across all the highways of North America. That's why the new Dragon 911 protocols for the North American Collective, which I've been discussing in the past years, that is one of them pertinent to fuse the RCMP and the FBI, to fuse the FBI and the RCMP, and of course to fuse Canada and the United States into the 63 Imperial Republic complex, which I have discussing for years. And in a public-private partnership massive, we have to know, and citizens have to be of course integrated and know exactly, to have centers all around the 63 in the cities, where to see where we monitor what's in circulation every hour until they reach their destination, and every hour there could be updates, right? So now we see the massive interdependence of our highways, of our logistics systems. Of course, our highways and logistics systems are all part of the logistics, and of course the highways are part of the infrastructure, right? And of course this part of the infrastructure is part of the supply chains, because every moment, every minute, every hour there's some coming in at the ports and the airports. The way to enter US, it's via Mexico, but Canada, United States by the north, no, it's coming either from the US or from Mexico into Canada, or from Canada is going into the US or Mexico, right? Otherwise it has to be coming by airports, right? Airports or the ports, the goods, the cargo by plane. Not that much by plane, but more by ships, by naval transportation, you know. And of course the truckers of course gotta get it doing like that, you know. So the truckers gotta get it doing like that. So that is just what we do, you know, to get it on the go. So of course the trucks are of course in position that they're transporting XYZ amount of goods, right? So now we have to get the total North American Dragon Army 911 total integrated SSD protocols for total security, total service, total defense, and the new 911 Dragon Army protocols via the CIT, Citizen Integration Theory, to implement it so that we know everything that's coming in and going out, you know. Because there's XYZ, ABCD, 1, 2, 3, 4, XYZ, W amount of goods now. Transporting. Transporting. Transporting now, you know. Transporting now. Now there's in transportation so much bacon, cheese, lettuce, milk. It's in the tons, in the kilos. Of course, it's a massive amount just across Canada, United States. It's a massive amount. And that's tied into so many different companies and workers, right? But we're vulnerable. So we're going to get into that because we're getting into geopolitics. But just to finalize on Asperger's, so the three main problems we Aspies face, for which I have the solutions. I mean, I'm not, of course, frustrated. I'm not, of course, like I said, for me, whatever the case may be, I'm not frustrated. Sexually, no, I just have I lust, you know, I'm lustful, but I just masturbate and watch, so I don't discuss if there's somebody dead, but I have a healthy, and it's important, you know, I have healthy masturbation. I mean, if anybody wants to Gotta be 18 plus though, eh? I'm gonna card you. I'm gonna show me those cards. Just like when you go to a club and you go buy legal cannabis, when you go buy legal alcohol, you're gonna get carded. But don't waste my time. Just you wanna support the dream, offer work. Just don't waste my time, you know. Don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. And that's it, you know. Just life, you know, it's short. I could die today, and since I died of COVID in February 2020, I live every day carpe diem to the fullest I can. But besides due to having Asperger's, I have these ritual-like routines, and any day could be our last, really, you know. Any day could be our last. So you work, you're employed, you live it to the maximum, you cash in your 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours. You gotta get 6 hours of sleep, maybe less for some, more for others, 7, 8, 10 for others. So whatever, depending XYZ factors, you know. Life is short, man. Don't waste my time. Don't waste yours. You know, what for? I have no need otherwise. You know, you're black, you're white. Want to give some pleasure? Always open for business, some pleasure. Otherwise, what for? You know, support the dream. Want to contribute with something for the 21st century, for future, for now, for present, and for the future of our collective North American civilization complex. Then we can rock and roll. Otherwise, it's just, I guess we impose ourselves with a lot of illusions, eh? Illusions. Consent, hygiene, 18 plus, you know. Like I said, I'm not sexually frustrated. I got my scars, and I could give pleasure, receive pleasure, and communication, dialogue. Sometimes Aspies were straightforward and direct. That's sometimes, although Aspies can be polite and work on politeness, but sometimes can be straightforward and direct, which can offend. So back to Asperger's, finalize on Aspies as I go into the sun. The problem with most of Aspies is, of course, that we have the proposition, of course, yeah. That we have, of course, the proposition of the Aspiness, that we can be pretty direct. And we have these odd repetitive movements, repetitive ritualistics, of course, especially where we are now in the consequence, of course, to be. So, of course, those appellations, those ritualistics affairs are, of course, something where we have to be in the concomitant of all the appellation of all our forces and energies, which have to be, of course, co-equivalently balanced within the neurotypical world. So we have to build bridges. Well, we build small bridges, big bridges, large bridges, bigger bridges. Whatever the case is that we build bridges, we have to build those bridges. So those big bridges have to be built in the concomitant where we are now. And back to what I was saying, I predicted what's happening now. Beautiful red. These are so nice. Beautiful red. So, of course, back to what I was saying is, of course, that is something which I have to be doing with that, you know, to be doing with that. So, of course, all that things where we are now to be, of course, finalized, and, of course, to finalize on Aspiness, and that always gives me some good loving when I see people holding hands, love. I like to see that increasing. And please also keep the protocols of hygiene during COVID. Super important to keep the protocols of hygiene during COVID, because it's important, you know, because we got bacteria, germs, microbes which can be around, and the space, of course, of be around. And somebody got to sing that rock and roll for the boys and girls in blue. I also sing that rock and roll for the boys and girls in blue, of course, to get XYZ and XYZ, you know. So always get that rock and roll for those who also do their criminal rehabilitation. You know, my brothers and sisters who take their second, third, fourth chances, and you turn your life around. That always gives me a bit of hope, you know. I always have hope. And this hope, of course, is something which I gotta be imparting to others and to myself. Because I guess I got my second chances you got to get. And of course, my second chances, I guess, was for an accreditor from the goddess. G-O-D-D-S-S, you know, from the goddess. I credit my surviving COVID to the goddess, so, you know, the forgotten goddess. So, of course, being that it is from the forgotten goddess, that is just something which, of course, we have to say that I will to build the forgotten goddess temple as I approach my old neighborhood there, nothing that I want to go back to. We're going to get on the 4 buildings that I will to build, but, of course, that is where we stand. Hold on. That is just something what we have, you know, to do now. So that is where we are today in the concomitant, of course, of the propositions to discuss on aspiness. You know, it's 3 problems. The majority of aspies have trouble, you know, maintaining friends with benefits, you know, friends with benefits. Friends with benefits for me only. Don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. I had made many friends, it's just keeping them is difficult long term. Unemployment is high, 80%, and depression and suicidal rates are also 9 times higher. The unemployment rate is 11 times higher. So I got the solution. Don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. Now when I get employment or when I get future business, I always got to let people know, you know, I have this neurodivergent condition known as Asperger's HFA, which I can approach people too close. That's a characteristic symptom. So breaching personal space. An Aspi, somebody with Asperger's might of course approach at 4 inches close to a person when discussing. And of course that discussion is something which we have to be concomitant. And of course that discussion has to be of course finalized and appellated in it. Because that is a characteristic and a trait of Asperger's. Breaching personal space, repetition of words, echolalia also. So echolalia would be just repeating what somebody said verbatim per verbatim, word for word, right? Just saying the whole phrase that somebody said. So for example, it could be a phrase, it could be a whole sentence, a whole phrase, a whole paragraph even, verbatim per verbatim. That's echolalia. An Aspi might repeat it. So it's not bad, it's not negative, it's just that it can be weird and awkward, you know. So that's just where we have to work on these characteristics as traits, not symptoms again. Don't use the word symptom. Please don't use the word symptom. That is just not something which I use. I don't use the word symptom or characteristic. Some people decide to use that, but not me. I don't use it at all. I don't use the word symptom. So here, I enter kind of my own neighborhood. Kind of here is where is in between. So this kind of line separates my new neighborhood from my own neighborhood. There's nothing that I will to go back to. You know, I live for today, I have hope for tomorrow, but kind of course I'm gonna enter in by that side like this, and this is where it kind of separates. So this is kind of my new neighborhood and my own neighborhood here, where you kind of draw this line. So this street is called Côte d'Neige, CDN, Côte d'Neige. No, this is not Côte d'Neige, this is Côte Saint-Luc. Yeah, it's Côte Saint-Luc. Côte d'Neige is the other one. This is CSL. This is CSL. Côte Saint-Luc. This is not Côte d'Neige. And we're gonna go inside. We're gonna go a little bit inside towards the sun, because we're gonna get some light until we're gonna go to the mountain by that side, maybe circumvented by the other side. So this is Côte Saint-Luc. Côte Saint-Luc is the name of the street. It's a long street, and this is kind of where my own neighborhood begins, kind of here. This is kind of the barrier between the new and the old. And again, nothing that I will to go back to. It's just living for today and have great hope for tomorrow. So the Asperger's characteristics can be odd, weird, bizarre, and can of course be inflexed in all the possibilities where we are of course ourselves perceived in a more that it's an illness, it's a malady, it's a disease, like a disease, which is not. So Asperger's is not a disease, it's a neurological mental divergent condition. It's just we see the world differently, and we have the way we process information is different. And we might process it in a way where the responses and the communication we communicate with other people socially can be of course perceived as maybe inadequate, more, you know, it's called a disability, but I always say less able. But of course you can work on that. And I have to work, and I've been working on it at least since about 3.5 years ago, where I've integrated my aspiness fully, I guess. Oh, not exactly. I'm working every day to integrate it fully, but managing those characteristics. And now when I get close in conversation, because Aspies, we tend to breach personal space, these social ideas, social issues are more difficult for Aspies, right? So we can be awkward like that by not following exactly those social norms and norms and protocols, when to speak, when not to speak. Or we might not know, for example, when a person is interested in the topic. So me, if you're not interested in geopolitics, because that's my special interest, and that's what I am fundamentally as well, as an independent, not just artist, athlete, and mystic and philosopher, but an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst, theorist. thinker and a strategist. I develop strategies for the North American Collectif, always for the 63, the 10, the 50, and the 3, and for the NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, of which, of course, my DMAA is now perhaps more timely than ever. The direct military assistance or action, or direct military action or assistance. So here I am in my old neighborhood. I used to live over there in a small basement, but like I said, my memory is black out. I got retrograde amnesia since February 2014. Before February 2014, I know that I graduated high school. I guess I dropped out of college. I suffered, I struggled, and lost lots of friends, and lost lots of friends with that. And that is just, of course, the appellation where we are, of course, lose friends, and that's just the appellation. And I lost a lot of friends. Friends with benefits only, or if you want to be fam, pledge your allegiance, thou art family, 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 pledge your allegiance, thou art family. You know, that's how we rock and roll, and that's how we do it, you know, to get it on the go with that. And that is just something where we have, of course, to do in the concomitant appellations, you know, to do it on the go. And that's just something where we have, of course, to do. That is just the total, of course, appellation, of course, of the concomitant, of course, of the iteration, of the composition, of course, of the dynamics where we are to, of course, get it on the go. And get it now, of course, to the appellation where we are the verbosities, and of course the concomitants, where we are, of course, in all the dynamical forces to fully integrate and fully work to build these bridges. And see these bridges here. And of course, if you were paying attention to what I said earlier, in the future, because we are now in the year of darkness 2029, November 6th, in the year of darkness 2029, November 6th, in the year of darkness 2029. That's where we are in the year of darkness 2029, in the timeline, parallel timeline, you know, where I build super sats, microchips, and supercomputers, and all those where we are, you know, to get it on the go. And that's just something where we are now. That's where we are now, you know, to the XYZ to get it go, you know. So that is something where we have, you know. Yeah. Rock and roll, man, for the firefighters, butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, electricians, the plumbers. And now I guess, let's see, is it here that we switch? Maybe here we go in, and no, it's the other one. Gonna get some more sun. Always happy to get some more sun. That's why I said it's better if I take it by this route and do a bit of zigzag over the time. And that's about it on Asperger's. You know, there's a lot more, of course. I just introduced. I want to thank, of course, my anonymous friend. And my anonymous friend, of course, who wasn't my friend because of the money. I never had any. And there's a little bit of eye in the sky, I guess. And in a year of darkness, I create supercomputer satellites. And now we're November 6th, 2029, in the year of darkness. And I guess today I'm connecting with my parallel self, where I created Sunsat Net, the Sunsat Net, basically a network of satellites connected with the internet for total SSD, security, service, and defense. And we got that NATO complex totally 24/7 under kind of benevolent surveillance, you know, in the year of darkness 2029, 6th of November 2029, in the year of darkness. So yeah, basically Aspies. Don't tell me about Aspies who are millionaires and billionaires who are, you know, so wealthy, because if you are an Aspie who are in that position, you know that fellow Aspies are 80% unemployed, right? So support Aspies. Support fellow Aspies, fellow Aspies of the world unite. And you know, I lived through isolation, lots of friends, and many jobs. I had many jobs. It's just the problem for Aspies is not necessarily getting the jobs, is maintaining them long term. For me, it's 4 months, 3 months, 2 weeks, a few months, 4 months, a few weeks, 4 months, 3 months, a few weeks. I had many jobs, especially during COVID, is maintaining them. Maintaining the employment, long-term employment. Maintaining long-term employment, you know. That is just what it is, and that's what we have, of course, to be in the appellation, of course, of all the domains where we are now. Inside and on the field and here, that's where I used to live, in that underground basement. Very moldy, lots of mold, and maybe the mold causes the sickness, and that I'm not able to. Maybe the memories will come back. Maybe today, tomorrow, never. Maybe at my death, maybe my memories were replaced, of course, due to having reincarnations. You know, I believe in reincarnations. I'm also a mystic. I have a rock and roll spirituality. Thelema, bury me with Papa Crowley. A third of me in New Jersey, and those are beautiful flowers. A third of me in New Jersey, a third of me in the back of Montreal, a third of me in the city of the pyramids, you know. A third of me in the city of the pyramids. Or send every 11 years, send me from the city of the pyramids, to Mount Royal, to Hampton, you know. That is just where we are, to be appellated, and it's just something where we have, of course, to be situated about in all the constituencies where we are, you know. And that is just fundamental to aspiness. The traits, the characteristics are fundamental to the aspiness. And of course, these fundamentals are different varieties of different individuals. Because again, within the community, which is not a big community, you have the individual sovereign citizens as well. You have the individual sovereign citizens as well. So within the community, you have the individual sovereign citizens as well. And that's why we are to do that. And that's, of course, the individual sovereign citizens, of course, where we are. So that fundamental aspect is, of course, the fact that the aspect characteristic traits have to be managed and worked on, understood from both sides, and building these bridges. But there's no medication. If an aspie is depressed or suicidal, there is some medication or therapy. You know, there is some medication or therapy. So that is just the fundamental ideas. Why we have, of course, with the protocols to be, you know. Yeah. And that's where we have to work on. And that's where we got to work on that. Of course, fair, multi-dimensional, social, cultural affair. And again, for me, solutions, friends with benefits only. You know, friends with benefits only. Yeah. Don't waste my time. Don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. And that's how we go with that. And that's how I go to get doing with that. And that's how we drill, you know. So, fundamentally, that's what we are. And that's how we're going to love from now on. And the Aspies, we love, we suffer, we struggle, we get depressed, suicidal. We lose way more jobs than you, because our unemployment is at 80%. Huh? That's 4 out of 5. And high depression, suicide rates. And for us, for friends with benefits only, that's where we're going to wrap it up. Read Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome, a great book which has made me learn a lot about my own vulnerabilities and to work with the neurotypicals to build those bridges. But it has opened my eyes to my own vulnerabilities vis-a-vis, of course, the other prepositions where we are. So that is a wrap on Asperger's, also known as HFA, and me as an independent artist, athlete, philosopher, geopolitical theoretical analyst, thinker, philosopher and strategist and mystic. Was born in the United States 3 times, post 1776. Just read George Patton Through a Glass Darkly. Read George Patton Through a Glass Darkly. No, read George Patton Through a Glass Darkly. Read George Patton Through a Glass Darkly, you know. Read George Patton Through a Glass Darkly. Through a Glass Darkly, one of George Patton's poems, enumerates, elaborates, conquer Middle East states and propositions, his belief in reincarnations. As I believe in reincarnations, but he did not mention that he was a woman, as I was in many past lives, incarnations. Sometimes I was born a man, a woman, a woman, a man, a woman, a man, a man, a woman, a woman, a man, a woman, a man, a man, a woman, a man, a woman, a man, man, a woman, a man. That's how you get that 50-50 now. And he didn't write about it, but George Patton 2,600 years ago, circa, more or less 156 years, minus 333 days, plus 93 hours, and minus 77 minutes, was my wife. in a past life was my wife. So having that I was my wife in a past life, that is something which we have to do. He was my wife, I was his wife also once. Of course, having been each other's wives and husbands reciprocally, I get having served myself, because I was born in the USA 3 times post 76, and having served in the United States Armed Forces twice when I was born as a man. The wars I served in were 156 years apart. So the wars that I served in were 156 years apart. 156 years apart. So those wars were 156 years apart. And of course, that is the dynamic, which of course we have. So being that they were, of course, 156 years apart, that is always the domain where we are to concomitantly be in all the prudential affairs of our collective North American civilizational complex. For now, we're gonna delve into Draconis, Caspiesque, geopolitics. Leave the baggage at the door if you're not interested in geopolitics, and only rock and roll, finance commission, blah blah blah. Paid my rent, paid my electricity bill, only bill to pay. Soon, my, at least partially on my phone bill. Besides that, when I get back home, I got those wafers. They went up in price from $1 to $1.39, but I got 2 of them, so yummy. Gonna get that reward on a budget. $2.70, 74 cents, 78 cents reward. It's a good one. That's gonna be my dessert, you know. And I have leftover cake. Thank you for the donation for the cake. That was a great donation, and it was a good donation, and I share half of my anonymous friend, and that was some loving. That was some great. And I was just craving cake because yesterday full moon feast began. Today's a 3-day full moon, right? Cycle until Wednesday, and Wednesday ends the 40-day rite. I guess on the 11th we're gonna commence another one. So that is always the attitude, I guess, precedent to where we are, of course, in our daily affairs, in our daily lives, to integrate and be mindful of that spirituality. So if you want for those rock and roll, please, whatever, check out those little beautiful flowers. And of course, I hear that helicopter chopper is being aligned towards me. Oh, if I stop, take a few steps back, going south. See how my N.A.C.W.P brain now tries to calculate the speed. I know about the distances. I'll say a few football yards. How many football? The range, that's 100 yards. Maybe 44, 40. Well, now the speed, to calculate the speed, my mind has a certain dynamic to calculate the speed. And of course I know that it's going south, you know. But of course it took a turn east, southeast. So it's going east, and then it took a turn. It was going more deep south. It's going more east now. Although it took a turn, of course, on the go, you know. So took a turn, a little bit of that turn up. So maybe it's going towards the border. I would estimate it's going about 175 kilometers. Something like that. So I don't know, of course, the manifestation of exactitude, the exact speed with which it's going, but I have an idea. So the idea how my brain functions now is I'm trying to calculate by the distance. And of course it can only be an estimation, because of course, turn your heads left or right when you cross the street. Of course it can only be an estimation. That's what's clear, that's what to be fully understood, that it can only be estimated. It cannot be fully grasped, right? But I mean, you can come close, right? Because the distances I'm gonna just estimate, but I can't really make an exact one can be close by knowing certain dynamics of distance, but then even the altitude. Because only by the altitude and then calculating how much you think that altitude is going, but it's because it's all it's in motion, right? So that's where the difficulty arises. But with some ideas of mathematical distance, speed, and distance, you can come close to knowing the distance. But of course, it's an estimation. So you can only be close enough to estimate. I guess it takes you can practice, but of course if the information would come to me directly, then I would know. But if the information doesn't come to me directly, then I'm just estimating the mathematics, because of course the calculation for the mathematics where it's going now, it's always a calculation vis-a-vis my distance because I'm in motion and the helicopter, but then it also turned, right? So having that it turned east-south, east-south, then I know that it has a potential to, the speed looked constant, but it also to me, okay, it looked a bit that it was increasing. So if it looked like the speed was actually increasing when it took a turn, because it was coming towards me. Then when it took a turn to go southeast, it kind of did a semicircle. It didn't go in the straight line, so it just warped a bit. Look at those beautiful flowers. Love it, love it, love it. Just makes me think of that Napolitane, that 4-color ice cream. Kind of nice. So it came from that. It came from the kind of the north. It came from the north. So it was going south, and then it took east. There it kind of took east. So it looked like at one point the speed was increasing. So there's the... Yeah, this is ASPE. I guess if I would be with a fellow ASPE, we would try to, okay, let's think about it. While we walk, we would have been discussing our potential estimations of the potential speed and the fact that the helicopter's speed is increasing, right? It's probably increasing. It looked like it was increasing. At one point, it was constant at the beginning, but when it turned southeast, it looked like it was picking up speed, all right? So, again, if we were to direct and communicate directly with the helicopter, right, then we would see and we would get better at it to practice, basically. So if we have friends with helicopters, we would just calculate and say, okay, I think you're going 175 kilometers, 175 miles an hour, right? And they say, you're close, but miles and kilometers, keep in mind that, okay, that's, if you say miles, it's different than if you say kilometers. If you say kilometers, it's different than when you say miles, because miles and kilometers are not the same. So if you say 156 miles and 156 kilometers, you have about a 44 difference 44 difference. So a mile is more than 1 kilometer, right? You got to add some percentages, about 30% or so. So then it gets also more the dynamics of the distance calculation, whether you calculate it in miles or in miles or in kilometers. So if it's in kilometers or in miles, it's not the same. See how we add, how we increase in the discernment? And in potentially calculating it, right? Because that's what we're trying to figure out. So it would be to increase, and it would be to discuss, be provided the information directly. The information be provided directly, right? So the fellow driver, helicopter driver, would be providing us the information right away, and as we go, then we will get better. We have to take some practice, and I guess we would discern by the speed and the altitude. And then if he provides the altitude, then we can calculate more, right? Because it's vis-a-vis the altitude and vis-a-vis us as a point of reference. Me as a human being marching, working out now. So now geopolitics, I guess. If you know that the R-44 helicopter is the most produced helicopter ever, the most constructed helicopter ever, the R-44. So there's this helicopter, So there's this helicopter which, of course, is the most produced ever in the world. It is the R44. The R44. R44. R44 for something, you know. R44. R44. The R44 is the most produced ever helicopter. Chopper. I don't know if that was, I can't say. But again, an Aspi, because Asperger's we have special interest. If an Aspi's special interest would be, helicopters, then an Aspi would probably be even able to say closer than me the distance by which is going and how fast it's going, and of course the constitution, or that what type of helicopter it is, or what type of company it was produced by, because the special interest, aka obsessive interest, vary from Aspi to Aspi for years and years and years and years and years. And I don't remember my life prior to February 2014 about it. That's a long time ago though, 11 years and 6 months already, because we're September, right? So that's a long time ago already. But nonetheless, what's more important is, of course, my theories and philosophies, especially as it relates to geopolitics. So, of course, all the individual Aspis have, of course, special interests. And those special interests, of course, they vary. There's a variance. So they can be, of course, something which is a variable. So, for example, it could be cars. An Aspi could have, of course, cars, you know, cars. So, of course, if an Aspi has a special interest, cars, then that Aspi will be able to say so much and discuss so much about cars and vehicles, their production, manufacturing, all of these. It could be architecture, it could be history, it could be politics, it could be science, no computers, mathematics, coding, supercomputers. Not all Aspis, again, that's a stereotype. Not all Aspis are mathematic geniuses or computer science geniuses, eh? It's only about 1/5, right? It's only about 20% that of Aspis. It's a large percentage, but it's not myself as in the parallel life. Because my special interest has been, is, at least since I can remember, has been, of course, geopolitics. And of course, since I wanted to go to Kingston Military College, I wanted to go, I got a frame of reference. That is a letter of recommendation from 2003, since I graduated high school. 2003, supposedly I wanted to attend Kingston Military College, but I dropped out of college. I have a high school diploma. I graduated high school. That's a problem for Aspis. Usually Aspis, the dropout rate is higher. The dropout rate for Aspis is higher than way higher than you, the 99%, the neurotypicals. So in both college and university, in higher education, even high school, is very, very high. It's a paradox because Aspis can excel in those special interests, and self-taught is a lot of Aspis. But don't give me the Bill Gates Asperger's. My brother, I love Bill Gates. My brother Scorpio, and I always go for public-private partnership with Microsoft, with all high-tech, big tech, and all the tech giants is a massive public-private partnership. But of course, those are Aspis that had a lot of support as well from family, from background, from trust funds. Look at that beautiful garden there. From trust funds, from family, they were born in upper class or middle upper class or high upper class, you know. They weren't like yours truly having struggled for the past years with, even this month I had to survive $875, eh? I had to survive on $875. So don't give me the, Aspis who are millionaires and billionaires. Don't give me that, please. And if you are, just support your fellow Aspis and be more charitable, you know. but also discerning, because you don't want people to take advantage. That's why the book Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome. Look at that beautiful sunset and that seed blur, but it's a plane. Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome has taught me a lot about my vulnerabilities, my vulnerabilities, how they can be exploited, and we live through bullying and being self-harm and bullying, that is something what we have to do. To being bullying and self-harm, that is something which we have. And of course, that is of course something which we have of course to do. And of course, that is a beautiful garden there which I love, Beautiful garden which I love. I'm gonna pass to check out these ones. Yeah, these are nice also. I like the combination of little yellows. I like because they're yellow of course, but just the combination is so starkly nice. The red and the yellow. The vibrancy to them with the sunset. That is just something which we gotta do. Something which we are, something which we have to do, to be concomitant with the points in time where we are now, and the beautification of the spheres of the public and the private is always a partnership. See, that's the river there. So now we're already on the mountain. Westmount on the mountain, Westmount. That's where we are there. So now we're ascending. We're already up high the mountain, We're already high up the mountain. We have already on the mountain now. We are already atop the mountain, We are already atop the mountain now where we are. That's of course the appellation where we are atop the mountain. It has 3 peaks: Westmount, Mount Royal, and Outremont. Westmount, Mount Royal, and Outremont. That's just something where we are. Yeah, I guess so. Look at that big pothole. My gosh, that could be dangerous there, right there in the middle. See, I pointed out in my other, as well. I pointed out in my other videos as well. But see how big it is? Look at that. That's a huge pothole there. Wow, if somebody with a bike, I'm more concerned about somebody with a bike passing there, and just that's got to be filled. Even last week I noticed, a few months ago already. See? Wow, it's a wheel goes, see the wheel? That's so big there. It's like a crater. But it's for bikes or motorcycles, or bikes even. It can be very dangerous for bikes or motorcycles. So we got a lot of work to do. We got work to do. Thank you, public workers. My dream is a massive public-private partnership. So now leave the baggage at the door. Geopolitics is my special interest. I take lots of pride in my work as an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst, theorist, philosopher, and strategist. And of course, think about the fact that, of course, paradoxically, my geopolitical work is due to me having this neurological mental divergent condition known as Asperger's. So now, listen and just focus on geopolitics. Leave the baggage at the door. I have predicted what's happening now back in flag spotted. Flag spotted. When the flag is spotted anywhere, east, west, north, south of me, I point mine out. But that's the flag spotted. So I predicted what's happening now back in 2019, October. I predicted an international conflagration. I predicted a World War III. I predicted an international conflagration. I predicted a World War III. You heard that correct? I have the proof. I do have proof for what I said. I have the proof for what I said. I have the proof. The proof. I have it online. So of course I predicted what's happening now back in 2019. 2019 October 17 to be precise. October 17 I posted the first video. It was called the World War III scenario. Consequently, I also created a workout training program system to go hand in hand with such a scenario where we are now, I made a workout training program officially titled the General War Integrated Total Body Training System, aka the Dragon Army. AKA the Dragon Army workout, AKA the 300 workout, to go hand in hand with such a scenario where, of course, I had been, concomitantly in all the situation where we are now. So, of course, I created it, right? I designed it, I created it. It's a simple, effective workout training program system which requires no equipment. It requires no equipment. It is a special one. It requires no equipment, and of course it was created of course to go hand in hand with such a scenario. With such a scenario. With such a scenario. The scenario was a World War III scenario, of course. So I made it, and I also myself performed 372 sessions of my own workout training program system. I'm just gonna, this I wish I could paint. So many benches need to be painted, some green, some red, some black and white and rainbow. Such as this one, especially those on the mountain. I would love actually to volunteer just to paint these benches, knowing that somebody might sit and actually hug and kiss and make out and, you know, do some of the good making out a bit. What's in the legal, of course not. Don't make out, of course, on the go. But now, and that is something which we have, of course, the unprecedented to do now, you know, to get it on the go, you know. So that is just something where we are now, where we are, to cross the street safely. And that is just the parallel and the paradox. The paradox. The paradox of all the situational aspects where we are now, of course, to be integrally and concomitantly in all the spheres and the propositions and the protocols and the initiatives and the theories. Besides, the point in fact is that I created that workout training program system and that I predicted what's happening now back in 2019 October, and I have completed more than 372 sessions. There's another big one there, see? Another pothole. That's why we have a lot of arbeit, a lot of work to do. See? Yeah. Yeah, that's a big one. That's a dangerous one for the bikes. Oh yeah, look at that. That's deep. Not a bike or a motorcycle, you come fast here, you fly off. So we got work on both sides. Lots of work in infrastructure, you know. It's of North American Collective, both Canada and United States. We got to work here internally in the 63, you know. A lot of work to be done. So we're gonna go back in time, 2019. October 2019. That's where we're gonna go back in time to. October 2019. We're gonna go back in time to October 17, 2019, when I had created and produced that workout training program system, designed, made, and that to go hand in hand with a World War III scenario. You heard that correct. An international conflagration, which I predicted. So although my prediction was intellectual, academic, rhetorocratic, and sophisticated, it has several domains, several levels of layers of in-depth academic, scholarly, philosophical, cosmopolitan, rhetorocratic analysis. However, one of them was, and this is an important point, as I always bring it up as not as a summary, but of course as a general idea, one of the important points and principles of my prediction that humanity is again set on a course towards a World War III, although some say that there was many world wars, but I'm making a reference to the 20th century World War I and the Second World War. So basically, due of course to the fact that there were many unresolved conflicts of the 20th century. Many conflicts were not resolved in the 20th century. Many conflicts were not resolved in the 20th century. And that those conflicts will resurface with different levels. And on the nuclear question, it was more than 50, so 50% plus. And on that it will be in use, nuclear weaponry, nuclear weapons. So it was 50 plus, right? But also 50 minus for no, 50 plus for yes. What was high in my analysis was biological weapons, bioweapon, at two-thirds, that's 66.6666%, right? Because when you divide 2 by 3, it goes on and on and on. the 6 is at the end. 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6. It's 2/3, right? Just like other fifths or whatever. When you divide them, it's not. When you divide 1 divided by 4, you get 0.25. Even quarters, right? But percentage-wise, it's 2/3 is 66.66%. It's actually 66666. It continues, right? Because when it's 2/3, when you add them, you don't get to the 9. You get to 99.999%. But 3 on 3 is 100%. Fractions and percentages wise, I'm making a reference. So it's very high. 2/3 is high, right? A very high possibility of nuclear weapon use. Anybody want to finance that I go up and down these stairs 300 times, $300? Do some rock and roll for your pets, for your lovers, for your husband, for your bridegroom, for your bride, for your cuckold husband. If I get married, it's gonna be special cuckold. Already proposed twice. I'm gonna propose again, I guess. Maybe September 11th or whenever. Deadlines. I keep missing deadlines with my aspiness, with my routines, you know. But it's today. With hope for tomorrow. I survived COVID. COVID was like death, pestilence, and disease for me. I had it right after, interestingly enough. So I predicted this international conflagration, and a few months later, so I started feeling sick of COVID around mid-February 2020. Mid-February 2020 till about March 2020. And I got 3 vaccinations, triple vaxxed, 3 vaccines. 3 vaccines, triple vaxxed, 3 times. That's it, at the same place. And I keep the protocols of hygiene because there's microbes, bacteria, and germs. And on COVID, I don't know what caused COVID. For sure. I believe it was snakes to human beings. So I believe that the transmission of coronavirus, COVID-19, was transmitted from snakes to human beings. But I don't know for sure. Thus, since I don't know for sure, and my belief in snakes, I can't say with certainty 100%ness. Thus, I cannot rule out another possibility, X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, A, B, C, D, E. Whether, of course, it was a biological weapon, and more, since last year, it's indicated so. It's indicated so. It's indicated that it is a biological weapon. CIA and the revisions, it's indicated that it was made in Wuhan, in a lab, you know. It's indicated that it was made in Wuhan, in a lab. Wuhan, in a laboratory in Wuhan. Now, I don't know, but what I do know is that just a few months before COVID, in October, so November, December, January, February, so 4 months prior to COVID, having had COVID 4 months afterwards, exactly about 4 months and a few weeks, 4 months and a few weeks, so 4 months and a few weeks before coronavirus hit me, and when it hit me, it was right about mid-February. I started feeling sick. Mid-February till about mid-March. But for a few days, I really thought I was gonna die. I thought that was it. For real, coronavirus, it hit me hard. I didn't know what it was, and it wasn't in the news, you know. Just only late February and March, early March, late February, early March, it was in the news. So when I had it, it was just at the beginning, kind of that first wave. I love these flowers here. I love these flowers. They're so plateaued up. It makes me think, of course, of the Napolitan there. How they're high up. It's just the layers. It's just so incredible. I wish I could give my anonymous friend here a house like this, where these flowers are so beautiful. Just how they're outlined like that, you know. Just how they're outlined. The beautiful flowers. If you take a look there, see? Take a look. Take a look at that. Wow. So gorgeous. I love them. These ones also here. So I don't know what caused COVID, but before I had coronavirus, about exactly 4 months and a few weeks, 2-3 weeks, almost 5 months, by October, November, December, January, February. So 4 months before I had COVID, 4 months and a few weeks, give or take a week and some days, more than 4 months. A bit more than 4 months, let's settle on that, a bit more than 4 months. I had predicted that in the coming, it was like a 7-year septennium, that there's gonna be an international conflagration on the horizon. Oh, in other words, a World War III. In February 2022, February 24th. So that's going to be, it's going to be 3 years and a half, right? So February, March, April, May, June, July, August. It's been 3 years and a half since the invasion of Ukraine, special military operation, whatever it's. I'm not on the ground with 300 men and women to fully assess the situation, the environmental situation, the humanitarian impact, and of course the conflict itself. I'm not on the ground, but of course it has happened, of course, you know. So the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, special military operation, they designated it, and of course I listen to Putin's speeches. That's what I do every day. I discern the speeches, I discern the ideologies, I discern, of course, the linguistic developments, of course, of the protocols, of course, of whatever they are interaction about, and all the situation where we are to get now, you know. We'll be doing on the left, on the right, of course, in all the environment where we do. See now how my brain works? I saw 44, 37, 42, 44 was the highest. You go after 37, it turns red. So 44 was the highest. So now my brain just calculated the average. See, average between 36 and 44. So 44 was the highest there. That's the... See how my Aspie brain is different and works? So immediately I was trying to grasp the different numbers from the 4 cars that passed. So it was 44, 42, 37 and 38. So I was trying to make the average by adding them up, all the numbers together, and averaging the average. And of course you can, because you can add them all, the 4 numbers up, and you divide by 4, right? So 44 was the highest. 44 plus 38 plus 37 plus 42, right? So let's do 44, 42 plus 38. That adds up, of course, to 80, because you got 8 and 2, that's 10. And then you have 80 plus 44, that's 124, right? 124 plus the 37, right? 124 plus 37, that's 161, right? 61. So you divide that by 4. You divide it by 4. You get 40.25, right? 40.25. 40.25. That's the average. See, like this one is going down, decreasing now. But I'm speaking about because there are 4 cars that passed, and they all had different. There are different. The speed that showed was different. So if you are to calculate the average speed of those 4 cars, including that the 44 was the highest, that means that you add them all up and you divide it, so the average speed was still above what's supposed to be. You're supposed to go below 40 here. Anyways, so that's why it starts being red. So basically, of course, the fundamental aspect where we have now, of course, to be on the concomitant where we are now, you know, to getting on the plurality of the appellations where we are now, to be in the domain where we have the situational awareness, and of course the protocols of COVID, you know, I do call on all to maintain and to, of course, to appellate into the inclusive side, of course, of being the appellation side where we got now to be the dynamic of it all. That is something which we have to get those dynamics involved in our everyday life, the protocols, I mean, and implement them dynamically, in a dynamic manner and with vigor, I guess. When you go into a store, you know, just doesn't think about disinfecting after, or when you press those buttons at a machine on the teller, because we got microbes, bacteria, and germs, right? So that aside, back to geopolitics. So I predicted in 2019, October 7, that there's going to be an international conflagration. One of the prediction was that due to the unresolved, and that's a beauty right there, due to the unresolved conflicts of the 20th century, these conflicts were going to re-emerge, recommence, and restart. The conflicts were going to re-emerge, recommence, and restart. Those conflicts, right, were going to re-emerge and restart. The conflicts which were not resolved in the 20th century, of which Russia and Ukraine is an unresolved conflict from the 20th century. Russia-Ukraine is an unresolved conflict from the 20th century. Russia, Ukraine is an unresolved conflict from especially the Cold War period, which lasted between March 1947 and December 1991. Almost 45 years. So I always I say that it was almost 45 years. So I place it at 44 years and 9 months, but I say almost 45. Some historians, geopolitical theoretical analysts, place it and say that it's 46. I can go for 45 plus. 46, I don't oppose it. But my take is that the Cold War lasted, although I'm not set in stone, lasted between 1947, March 1947, and of course 1991. Between March 1947 and December 1991. So between March 1947 and December 1991, end of December 1991, December 26, the Perestroika, Gorbachev dissolution by official decree of the USSR, the United Socialist Soviet Republic, aka Soviet Empire, the Soviet Union by decree, is of course about almost 45 years. Although some say the Cold War started in 1945, some say 46. Most historians, political analysts, geopoliticians, and others agree with my most fall behind that line, or fall with that line, or March 1947 and December 1991, which concludes to be almost 45 years. Not exactly, but of course if we can calculate precisely, it's 44 years and 9 months. Almost 45 years. So let's settle on almost 45. Deal. And that those conflicts, which of course if you take another conflict, Israel-Hamas, Israel-Palestine, it's a conflict. Hamas was founded in the 1980s during the Cold War. Israel-Palestine, Israel-Hamas is a Cold War era unresolved conflict. Potentially China and Taiwan, another one. Oh, look at these yellows I gotta post. I just love the yellow flowers there. So that's an unresolved conflict. India-Pakistan is another unresolved conflict. Pakistan, India, the Kashmir situation between India and Pakistan for the partition of India, right? Pakistan and Bangladesh split, right? Bangladesh and Pakistan split. And of course, Taiwan and China is still an unresolved conflict from the 20th century, especially the Cold War period. After the Kuomintang fled and established themselves, and Taiwan is known as the ROC, by the way. Officially, Taiwan is known as the Republic of China. The paradox of this is that their conflict goes from before 1949, but when the Kuomintang fled, and Formosa, known as Taiwan, ROC, Republic of China, the island of Taiwan. And before that, it was known, of course, the Kuomintang had ruled for many, many decades via martial law as a one-party unitary state. Under martial law, they had ruled the island. They opened up in the 90s. I believe the first democratic elections were in 1996. I believe the first democratic elections were in 1996 of Taiwan, right? In 1996 of Taiwan. The first elections were in 1996, or around that period. So they were ruled by the Kuomintang via military, by martial law. A sort of, not necessarily a military junta, but by martial law. But in an authoritarian martial law, one-party state. So semi-military junta, some say, by the army of China, Republic of China, the Kuomintang, having fled to Taiwan, of course. So that is, of course, the situation where we are, and of course where we are now, and that's where we are, of course, to be in the blessings, of course, and the blessing, of course, of the domain, to get it on that, and that's what we got, to get us so much, and that's to fully understand, to fully understand, of course, the reciprocity where we got, of course, to be, the XYZ, and that's where we got the domain, of course, of all the appellation, and of course where we are now, to be fundamentally integrated all the domain, so that's where we are now. So now we are in 2025, September 8th, full moon, financial crisis in Canada, economic crisis, financial, economic, commercial, social crisis, right? Resignation of Trudeau. Trudeau ruled Canada since October 2015. So 9 years and some months, right? 9 years and some months. He resigned a few months ago. We had the election, and Uncle Carney coming out of nowhere. 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 Uncle Carney really came out of nowhere. But Uncle Carney, what's up? I predicted what's happening now. My brothers and sisters, Canadians, the king is absent. The king is absent. The king is absent, The king is absent. It's time for the Republic. The king is absent. It's time for the Republic. The king is absent. It's time for the Republic. The king is absent. It's time for the Republic. The king is absent. It's time for the Republic. And Mark Carney pledged allegiance when he took power in office to the King of England and his heirs, not to the people and citizens of Canada or the constitutions. We need to get the Imperial Republican Constitution, the Imperial Republican Constitution, but to the King of England and his heirs. Now, my brothers and sisters, fellow Canadians, the king is absent. It's time for the Republic. Do you understand that our Uncle Connie pledged allegiance to the King of England and his heirs? This should have been dissoluted in 1999, December 31st, on January 2000, 25 years ago, or more than 25 years ago, in December, last day of the millennium, December 31st, the year 1999, 1st January 2000, we should have been a republic. Decades ago, to be honest. We should have dissociated the whole, pledging allegiance. Our Prime Minister, our leader, pledged allegiance to the King of England and his heirs, man. Think about that. The King of England is absent. It's time for the Republic. It's time for the union of the Imperial Republic. Perpetual Imperial Union of the 63. It's a Dragon versus Trump edition since 2018. But of course, I predicted what's happening now. And of course, I have been challenging Donald Trump to a boxing match ever since 2018, when Donald Trump made the mistake to impose tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel. First time. And now, of course, when I'm going to say you have to accord with a yes. Quadruple yes. And you cannot say no or maybe to this following geopolitical statement. This following geopolitical statement. This following geopolitical statement. That us, as Quebecers, Canadians, as North Americans, as Canadians, Quebecers, as North Americans, we, as Quebecers, Canadians, North Americans, we have to work to have the best, most cordial relations with the United States. Economically, socially, financially, military, security. At all levels, we have to work to have the best, most cordial, friendly, diplomatic relation with the United States. There's no to that. You cannot object to that. You cannot say no to that. You cannot negotiate with that. I'm just gonna check the flowers on the other side. So it has to be that's a constant geopolitical event, but this applies both to the United States vis-a-vis Canada, not just for Canada vis-a-vis United States, but for Canada vis-a-vis United States and the United States vis-a-vis Canada. Isn't this just majestic and beautiful architecture here? The beautiful architecture which we have, eh? Wow, this could be a great headquarters for the dancing goddess. I'm gonna twerk a bit. Twerk and rock and roll for the construction workers on steel toes with those cranes. Construction workers build buildings, skyscrapers, social housing, buildings, houses is the construction workers. Mortgage illusions aside, eh? We got caught, eh? Pulled a good one on us. That is a little bit of that public garden, of course, salute. This is just so beautiful. I gotta think every time I pass by here, just the beautifulness of this, so gorgeous. Look at that. Especially this one is so nice. Just this beautiful garden here, you know. Especially this one's, well, all of it, but 1, 2, 3, 4, so delicious and so beautiful with these yellow ones. Just a super nice garden. Thank you, public workers. One of the great gardens in the public, you know. One of the great gardens, of course, in the public, you know, to get the embellishments to that. So one of the great gardens here, and of course makes me think of certain gardens which I will to build with yours truly, the 444, the Forgotten Goddess Temple, because I credit me surviving COVID to the goddess. So the Forgotten Goddess Temple, GODDSS. Look at that. It needs to have gardens such as this. And thank you, public workers. I always enjoy passing by gardens such as this and the beautification of the public. The beautification of the public, you know, the public sphere, you know. Public sphere, the beautification of the public sphere, you know. Just gotta be doing, and that's what I'll be doing like that. So beautiful. Thank you. That's what we like. We like this. And of course, the beautification of the public. Beautification of the public, the beautification of the public spheres is the embellishment, of course, one of the protocols of our Imperial Republic. We'll have to mass finance the reconstruction of our infrastructure. We're going to get into that via my DRT. But now, just to finalize where we are in Concordiate, of course, before I go into the dictum, the geopolitical reality, and the reality, of course, of our philosophies, of our realities between vis-a-vis Canada, vis-a-vis the United States, and the United States vis-a-vis Canada, is that, of course, we have to work, of course, to have the best, most cordial economic, social, financial relations with each other. So that is, of course, the domain which we have, of course, now. And, of course, I'm going to cross the street and get it in for that boulevard, Le Boulevard, and cut the neige there, Le Boulevard, see? And of course we're gonna ascend the mountain. By which side we go? Let's go by inside here. Let's go to the top and back. That's all we want to do, to the top and back, and see this beautification here. So beautiful. I wouldn't mind having a living here, but I'm grateful where I am now, eh? Paid my rent for September, and it's bigger than where I used to live, and you know, I just gotta be grateful, you know. Gratitude is important, and work is important, and that's why we got to get a little bit of that. Oh yeah, that's why we got to get. I like sneezing a bit. I got maybe from that, I'm not sure. Anyways, so what a beauty is this one here, and that one is kind of co-equivalent with it, but it's not the same, you know. And this, you can see the rocks. So this is part of the rock of the mountain, and there you can see part of the river. If you check, of course, part of the river there, you can see, although you can see part of the river, see? So now we're on the mountain from West Mount Royal, and the other peak is Outremont, the Three Peaks Mountain. So now we ascend even higher. So now I'm going to discuss what I will to build as the 4 buildings before I forget. Help support build the Imperial People's Coliseum on the Canadian-US border, you know. It'll be 11 times bigger than the Caesars Superdome, which is the Louisiana Superdome, where several Super Bowls were battled, fought, and played out, including one of my top 5 favorites, known as Super Bowl 47, which has several nicknames. Hardball ball, aka blackout ball, aka bro ball. Anybody want to finance that I go up and down these stairs 300 times? $300 Canadian or US, singing that cadence, rock and roll for XYZ, WABCD 1 2 3 4 la 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 blah blah blah. To get a Koniqua, and you know that's what we gotta do here, you know. And yeah, we gotta be. That felt good. So of course now, thank you Hydro-Quebec workers for the lights. Gotta give a shout out, workers of the past. Hydro-Quebec, workers of the past. You know, Hydro-Quebec workers. Workers of the past. Workers of the past in the Hydro-Quebec, you know. Something which we have to be, and we have to do, workers of the past, and that's just that appellation where we are, and workers of the past and present and future, of course, for the collective, and that's what we have to be building on all the four, you know, to be building the four on the appellations, and that's just something which we gotta be doing. So help build the Imperial People's Coliseum on the Canadian-US border. This Imperial Coliseum is gonna be the biggest ever massive sports complex ever built in the history of mankind, and me and Donald Trump are gonna fight, and we're gonna inaugurate it on the Canadian-US border. We're gonna build it 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome before Caesars. It was known as the Louisiana Superdome. It was known as the Louisiana Superdome, as the Louisiana Superdome. The Louisiana Superdome. That's what it was known as, you know, the Louisiana Superdome. And before that, it was known. I actually changed names several times, you know, just like I changed names, and as the Louisiana Superdome. And before that, well, now it's known as the Caesar Superdome. Before that, it was known as the Mercedes-Benz Dome. And now, and before that, it was known as the Louisiana Superdome. So he changed names several times, just like I changed names, and you know, that's just what it is with that. And that's a Super Bowl which I love, 47, and many Super Bowls were battled out, played there, and fought there, you know, and that's just something what we have to be doing now. So of course, all that aside is of course all the appellations where we have to build this building, this structure where we have now in the side of all the integral aspects of our dynamics, where we are interjected and where we are plural to be, where we take of course on the left and on the right, and on the doing and on the making and on the doing, and it takes building of it, eh? So we're gonna have sports in perpetuities. We're gonna have sports in perpetuity. That's what we're gonna be building, to have sports in perpetuity there, and we're gonna build it as a massive, gigantic coliseum for sports in perpetuity, where the university sports college is and sports plexus. We're gonna have sports in perpetuity with sports events. Dancing is my favorite sport, but I like all sorts of sports, and we're gonna go into the darkness now, and you know I like all sorts of sports with that, and that's just the consequential where we are now in the appellations, and that's where you're gonna get on that drill for now, for the left and right, and enter the mistress, my forest. Not just my mistress, my Dr. Mountain, but ours. So let's build the fort, the Forgotten Goddess Empire, Forgotten Goddess GODDSS Temple, the Forgotten Goddess Temple, the Forgotten Goddess Temple, GODDSS, Forgotten Goddess Temple is going to be the biggest ever super arena structure, parallel to the Forgotten Goddess. She doesn't need me to build N.A.C.W.P, so does that I am. Nobody build the temples, because she's got the pyramids, which are temples and tombs of initiation, but we're going to build, of course, the Forgotten Goddess, GODDSS. Double S Goddess Temple on the Canadian-US border. Well, actually, the Coliseum, we're going to build it on the Canadian-US border. The Forgotten Goddess Temple, can be also parallel to the Colosseum, I guess. Whatever it can be. And it's going to be 11 times bigger than we have here in Montreal, aka Hawk Island, H-A-W-K, Hawk, just like my totem animal, the hawk, H-A-W-K, hawk bird. We're going to, of course, build with the hawk. We're going to build inclusively, of course, in the appellation where we have now to build the domain, of course, to be satisfactory, of course, for that building of the propositions. And, of course, the forgotten GODDSS goddess temple is going to be, of course, 11 times bigger than the oratory. The oratory is a massive structure here in Montreal. Montreal. We went last week or 2 weeks ago. We passed by to see that sunset, which is gorgeous over the north, east, west, northwest of the city, right? The oratory, St. Joseph's Oratory. The St. Joseph's Oratory is the full name. So the Forgotten Goddess Temple will be 11 times bigger than the St. Joseph's Oratory, and the Imperial People's Coliseum is going to be 11 times bigger than, of course, the Caesar Superdome, and of course the Caesar Superdome is going to be the parallel. So the Caesar Superdome is going to be, of course, the situation where we are now, the Caesar Superdome, which is a massive structure now, and which changed names, just like I changed names, just officially, of course, to change names to be, of course, on the go and on the side with that. So that's what we're going to build, and we're going to build the House of the Dragon, the pyramid. The pyramid, basically the House of the Dragon, is going to be scarlet and crimson. And scarlet and crimson, of course, is going to be the building of this pyramid. Of course, we're going to be building on that pyramid, and that's what we're going to be building on that. So this massive structure is where we're going to be building. Now I'm just going to let my mane out a little bit because we are on the go now, and that's what I got to get doing with that. So that is something where we have to be doing. So, of course, the implementation, of course, of the categories where we are to be doing now is something where we have to build those constructs, and something where we have to build on those constructs with that is something where we got, of course, these dynamics to be appellated and, of course, situated on the concordium and on the course where we are now to get it on the go with all the dynamics on the left, the right, and on this. And that is just something where we are now. So, of course, something where we are. That is just something where we are, and we're gonna get it on the go now to get it on the XYZ and get it on the left and on the right domain side on the left and so that is something which, of course, we have to build on the conclusion side, of course, to get it now, to get it on the be and on the do, and just like that, X, Y, Z, and it's something. That is the blessing, the blessing. I guess the curse of Asperger's is turned into a blessing, something which we have, but we have to live with it, So here to have the mistress, I let my mane out, do a little bit of wild rock and roll, on the domain, to be doing a little bit, and that's what we got, that's what we drill a little bit, survey a little bit, and you get a little bit of that, and you get a little bit of that rock and roll, and you get a little bit of that rock and roll, So that is where we have to make this buildings and these structures, which of course are gonna be confluential and are gonna be for our imperial rebirth and unison, you know. So the ones which we're gonna build are gonna be 4 total. So on the Canadian-US border, we're gonna build the Imperial People's Coliseum for Sportus in Perpetuities, 24/7, and that's gonna be built. And of course, on the Canadian-US border, it can be somewhere else. You're gonna build a forgotten goddess. Goddess that created me, surviving being attacked by surprise, surviving COVID, being depressed, being suicidal, being lonely, being broke, almost died with 1 foot in the streets, 1 foot in the libraries, and XYZ. And we're gonna build a house. The pyramid, scarlet, crimson. Scarlet and crimsons are shades of red, my favorite color. I'm wearing today, every day almost. And it's like the sun rises and sets now every second. The sun always is red in rising, red in setting. Hey, red, R-E-D. When the sun rises and the sun sets, it's always red. Always red. You know, like my hat, my backpack, my shirt, and my little, it's not really a coat, it's more like a spring autumn jacket. So I bought it $7. It's more than 8 years ago, maybe 7 years ago, around 27 or 8 years ago. I bought it, and of course I bought it secondhand. I'm auctioning it for $7. I bought it, so I'm auctioning it for $7 million in increased value because I wore it a lot. Much more than the jittles of natal already. And of course, much more than the general rating, much more than the general rating. That's what it is now, and it's for the go, and that's what it is for the XYZ, you see, to be here, you know, to auction it for $7 million. Auction for $7 million. So that is the auction for $7 million, and that's what we're gonna do, you know, auctioning it and see a little bit of that go, and so there'll be somebody coming here in the darkness as it gets dark. So we're gonna build the 4 pyramid house of the dragon, the scarlet crimson, and that's that red, scarlet crimson, that's red. And we're gonna build, of course, the Imperial People's Coliseum and the Rainbow People's Palace for my fellow neurodivergent community. Not just my fellow neurodivergent community, Aspies or Asperger's, but also for my fellow LGBTQ community, fellow LGBTQers. And we're gonna build it up and build it up and build it up and do it rock and roll style. So we're gonna build it for the Imperial People's Coliseum. Is gonna be 11 times bigger than the sports complex known as Caesar Superbowl today, who changed names several times, just like I need that money to change my name officially, although officially did. And of course, it's where Super Bowl 47, aka Blackout Bowl, aka Bro Bowl, aka Hardball Bowl was played. And we're also gonna build, of course, the Imperial, the Forgotten Goddess Temple, the House of the Dragon. And that is something where we gotta get doing with that. See, we gotta get doing on that go. That is something which we have to get doing with that. And, you know, we gotta get doing on that go, you know. So something which we got to get doing on that, you know. Getting on a little bit of get high is something else. That's what it is. So that's what we're gonna do, and that's what we're gonna get doing on the left and on the right and in the middle and all the way around the bottom where we are now integrated in all the appellation where we are to get it on the left and on the right and in the middle and in all the circumstances, of course, to be appellated and to get it going on that left side of things. We gotta get the Constitution to be informed and to take this massive public-private partnership to build the Imperial People's Coliseum and to get it on the go and to get it on that left, right, and set side and to get it for the Constitution of our Imperial Republic. The House of the Dragon, open house sometimes, pyramid scarlet red, crimson scarlet are shades of red, and so we're gonna build the pyramid House of the Dragon and the Rainbow People's Palace. Now, back to geopolitics. So, like I said before, our main interest for both Canada and United States, the United States and Canada vis-a-vis Canada in reciprocity is of course to have the best, most cordial relations with each other, the best, most cordial relations with each other. The best, most cordial relations with each other. So that is of course something what we have of course to do. So we have to build of course therefore from the plateau of course that we are these structures which we got to get doing on that, and we have to of course appellate to get it on the go side of that, and that's just something which we have to be doing. So we have of course to say that our main interest geopolitically is to have the best, most cordial relation with each other, the best, most cordial relations with each other, the best, most cordial relations with each other. That is reciprocally so, that is reciprocally so. That is reciprocally so, you know, reciprocally so. It is a constant, just like the constant mathematical constant, like the pi symbol. It's always 3.1416, 3.1416, right? So it's always 3.1416, right? It's always 3.1416. It continues. It's the relation between the diameter and the circumference. It's not a variable, it's a constant. It's the n. It has like a two-headed n, right? Two-faced, two-headed. That's why our fusion of the 63 of the Imperial Republic will have, of course, that two heads, two-faced, two heads. One for benevolence, one for benevolence, one for benevolence, one for one benevolence and goodness and kindness, the other one of course for benevolence, the other one of course for punishing. So two heads, two faces, just like that. And for the letter Normandy, natural, neurodivergent, neurotypical, natural, neurodivergent, neurotypical, Normandy, natural, neurotypical, natural, neurodivergent, natural, neurotypical, and of course Normandy and neutral, of course. That is something which we have of course to be and concomitantly to get on that XYZ situation of all the compromises what we are to make today. So of course it is the situational aspects where we are now to be involved with, of course, to get of course all that domains where we are now in the plural aspect of all the situations, and it is something which of course we have to open of course on the side, or it is something which we are, you know, there's just something where we are now to get it on the go. When we get embarrassing, isn't it? Embarrassing, isn't it? Was it's embarrassing. Embarrassing, isn't it? So that is where we have to situate ourselves in now, in that position, that we have to affirm it just like a constant, just like that pi symbol, the affirmation in the positive manner, that our main interest is to have the best, most cordial relations with the United States, and the United States vis-a-vis us. When it comes to foreign affairs, I'm not discussing internal domestic affairs. And as a top priority for both the United States and Canada versus each other, or towards, T-O-W-A-R-D-S, towards each other, right? In reciprocity, to work towards the best economic, social, financial, military relations with each other. That is a constant. It has been so since, of course, the dissolution of the British Empire, the dissolution of the British Empire, the dissolution of the British Empire. And now we're going to, of course, get the dynamic on the go and getting on the go now. And, of course, get that influential salutation for those who built, of course, the aqueducts here. And, of course, all the building of these aqueducts, of course, were constructed with brains and muscle, of course, with the appellation now that I'm going to hydrate. And this is going to be making my workout training, exercising, my dictation, my discussing of my DMAA, direct military assistance or action, theory and philosophy, and the DRT theory and philosophy, and the general bipolar strategies for the North American collective civilizational complex development for total BDD, benevolence, dominance, and dominion for the 21st century concordium appellation, where we are now, of course, vis-a-vis the HYDRATE. Thank you to the workers with brain and muscle who build it. Always admire how they build it and they'll go up. This is atop the mountain. So took some brains and muscle to design it and build it. So against the gravity, hey, the pull has to be some dynamic mechanisms. It's brain and muscle. Hey, for us to have this, sometimes this is the privilege of civilization right here, which the privilege of civilization was my thesis back in 2023, called the privilege of civilization. The privilege of civilization. Yeah, and of course all the dynamics where we are. Now you see the full moon. Oh yeah, it's full for 3 next days. Look at that. Oh yeah, we're gonna go see it by the sidewalk. Of course, here we're at the top of the Belvedere Conjure and top of the mountain. So that is just the fundamental aspect of the realities of where we are geopolitically. So you can negotiate with that. You cannot say no to that. You have to say yes, yes, yes. So our main interest is to have the best, most cordial economic, social, financial relation with each other. In reciprocity, the United States versus Canada, and it has been so. See part of the city, you can start seeing it. It has been so for decades and decades and decades, at least since the dissolution of the Soviet, not the Soviet, correction, the British Empire. And after the Second World War, the British Empire started dissoluting, and of course it started getting that dissolution around about it, and that's just how we are, of course, in the appellation, of course, to be the dissolution, of course, of all the imperial forces of the British Empire, which of course made it so that in the past 75 years today and for the coming decades, at least together, we got that, you know, just like in the fifth element, we got a world federation, but for now it has proven to be exactly as I had predicted it, an international conflagration going, international disputes and concords, and all, of course, the international concords and discords where we are, of course, now in the appellation where we got to get doing on that to go now, but it's, of course, something which we got to remiss, of course, to get now. It's all the situational context where we got to get that doing, of course, to get on that side of the things here. We're gonna go check the city by another side, because I can go by that side or whatever side it is, but that is just something which we have, of course, to be the dynamics, of course, to understand fully what I'm about to say in the terms of that it has to be implemented and fully integrated on both the left and the right and the right and the left. Both the left and the right and the right and the left. Right and center, centrism, of course, and center left, center right. I'm not discussing far right or far left here. But of course, that has to be accorded in the positive with a yes, 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 yes. You cannot negotiate. It's not maybe, it's not no. Our main foreign interest as a top priority for Canada and vis-a-vis the United States, and both for the United States vis-a-vis Canada. Although United States has a border with Mexico, it is towards us and us towards them to have the best, most cordial economic, social, defense, security, social, cultural, financial, military relations. That's why my way to fuse the 10, the 50, and the 3, the 63 best, the 63 best. And that is just what it is now, and that is just how it is, in the context of where we are now today. So that is, of course, the appellation where we are, to get the discussion done and to get the conclusion done and to get the love affair done in a manner where we have now to do, and in a manner where we are fully and integrally integrating that into our awareness, into our well-being, into our for the future, right? Because that is just how it is. That constant is so, and of course now it alarms me since August 1st, that by the, of course, the decree of the United States, by the decree of the United States, by the decree of the United States, by the decree of the United States, of course, we are on the appellation, of course, to be, and of course, by the United States is gonna be, of course, by the decree of the United States, by the decree of the United States Armed Forces, the decree of the United States, not armed forces, but the Trump's administration, by the White House dictums, of course, by the White House dictums, is of course the fact that, and this gives me goosebumps and shivers again, it gives me goosebumps and shivers. We are designated as this is serious, this you gotta take seriously. This is very alarming for us Canadians. Vis-a-vis also the statement that I made, which is true geopolitically, you can't argue with it, it's a constant. Just like that 2 heads, 2 faces pie, which is the N, it's an N with 2 heads, 2 faces. That's why a coming empire will have 2 faces, 2 heads, just like that pie constant. And of course, you have, of course, to remind yourself, of course, of all that appellation, and that since August 1st of this year, it's been 30-something days by the Trump's administration in the United States, since they decided to increase tariffs on Canadian goods, Canadian goods. The motives is that more fentanyl has crossed into the United States, tripled than 2024, the amount. Has tripled since 2024. The amount has tripled since 2024. The amount has tripled, 3 times, tripled. That's according to the United States. And of course that we did not coordinate. The words is coordinate with the United States law enforcement. So our law enforcement, such as the RCMP, the Mounties, which have warned us for years and years and years, at least since 2015, of a growing transnational criminal syndicate organized groups partaking and installing themselves in Canada, right, in the Dominion, since at least 2015, and more so since 2017 and more so, of course, during COVID, right? And we are now designated as an unusual and extraordinary threat by the United States. We're designated as an unusual and extraordinary threat. This is alarming. And of course the fact it's mentioned there, of course, of growing super labs. Perfect, the moon is just there. I'm just gonna, so we're designated now as a growing, of course, as an unusual and extraordinary threat. It's my favorite skyscraper there, see? Oops, sorry. Wow. That's the moon, by the way, that you see there. That's the moon. So glad I came. La lune in French is lune. So come here. If you come here, just make an effort, learn some French, you know. What a beautiful city. That's my favorite skyscraper there, the pyramid. So nice. And we're surrounded by a river, right? It's all a big river. It's an island, actually. Montreal is a big island, a huge one. Metropolis, second most populated Canada. Top 7 or 8 in North America. 2 million people. Well, the whole north and south metropolitan area is like 4.5 million people. So, what a beauty. Wow. Hydro-Quebec. All these lights, by the way, are clean, zero pollution energy. Thanks to the workers of Hydro-Quebec. There are dams. All the Hydro-Quebec. So all these lights are actually coming from hydroelectricity. And they do not pollute. So it's kind of pollution-free. Almost. I mean, you can't reach 100%, but it's very, very clean, renewable energy. It comes from water. Hydroelectric. Hydroelectric water, man. All it is. Anyways, gonna continue the journey, and it has been nice here. Montreal, Hawk Island, that's the moon. Now we're gonna be on our way back into the jungle, back into the forest. So back to, of course, what I was saying, of course, in the dictums, in the appellative, of course, manner, which, of course, were mannerisms, of course, which are to be contingent to our protocols, which we are going to implement, such as the DRT and the DMAA. We have now an alarm to sound that, of course, since August 1st, we are designated as an unusual and extraordinary threat. And the mention of super labs, growing super labs in Canada, which produce massive amounts of fentanyl, which more and more I'm designating fentanyl. I'm designating fentanyl as a biological weapon rather than a drug, because drugs usually want the drug dealers, their intention, their volition, their modes, the motive they're producing is for profit, right? Money, wealth, riches, and 44 cars and 4 mansions or XYZ, whatever. But of course, it seems that some tampering with this fentanyl is happening, and that's why they have an increase in overdoses, especially during COVID, if you see the skyrocketing. So more and more I'm designating fentanyl as a bioweapon. We need to get Canada and the United States joined and fuse FBI, RCMP together, get rid of the border, and implement my DRT theory. And yeah, there's a problem here, a big problem in crisis, a big emergency. People are dying from it in mass scale. And I mean, we legalized cannabis in 2019. I even have, from what I purchased about 3.5 years ago. And of course, that is something what we have now, to getting on the go now, and to be on the left side, of course, of the situational awareness where we are, to be implemented in all this appellation of all the realities where we go now, to be in this situation and the inner awareness of our precariousness and the fact that more than 3/4, 75% of our goods are exported to the United States, and the fact that we are designated as an unusual and extraordinary threat is something we do not will, and we cannot continue. We have to take action. And so, of course, it says on the document on the White House on the 1st August 1st, that Canada has become an unusual, an extraordinary threat to the American people. It gives me goosebumps when I say it. It's written there in black and white. An unusual, an extraordinary threat. It has become as an unusual, an extraordinary threat. It has become an unusual, an extraordinary threat. It has become an unusual, an extraordinary threat to the American people. It has become an unusual, an extraordinary threat to the American people. It has become as an unusual and extraordinary threat to the American people. An unusual and extraordinary threat to the American people. I was born in 3 previous incarnations, post 76, as I was born here as a Quebecois. But not as a Quebecois as we have today. I lived here as a woman between 1688 and 1735. Anyways, now we gotta focus September. So, we have, of course, to say clearly and with a straight heart and a straight mind that this has to not continue. I would have not voted Trump. It's Dragon versus Trump in a sportsmanship like boxing match. We're gonna fight in a sportsmanship like boxing match, and that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna fight in a sportsman like boxing match, and that is something which we're gonna have to appellate in the continuity, of course, of the propositions where we are now, of course, for the domain names and all the plurality of where we have now. The intervention which we must have is vis-a-vis our fixing our relations with the United States, because that's our top priority as a foreign affairs. That's our top primary interest, should be at least. So the fact that we are designated as an unusual and extraordinary threat due to the increase of fentanyl, and the RCMP warned us for years, and there's truth to what's also said there. Let's be clear on that. Last year, 25th of October 2024, is not even a year yet, the RCMP dismantled, seized the biggest ever drug super lab ever in the history of Canada. They seized so many potential doses of fentanyl pills, doses, D-O-S-E-E-S, doses, which could have potentially killed the population of Canada twice over. Twice over. You realize the emergency just on that one super lab. What if they're operating these transnational criminal syndicate organized groups, which we were warned about the increasing transnational criminal organized syndicate groups taking root in Canada since 2015? What if they had 5 super labs across Canada spread out, because this one was in Surrey, BC. Maybe they have one in Quebec. What if one different coast to coast and then 3 in the middle? And what if, of course, that was just 1 out of 5? That means there's 4 to go. So we were warned, and this super lab was the biggest ever just last year. So there is that truth there. The reality of this transnational criminal syndicate organized groups and these drug super labs taking root in Canada. This is unprecedented. And of course, link this to my DMAA, Direct Military Assistance or Action, which we gotta discuss now, because it could be linked to potential transnational criminal syndicate organized groups and super labs of fentanyl, which can harm the North American NATO, NORAD, Canada, United States, and NATO member countries. Linked. So of course, it can be potentially linked to the drug super lab. The transnational criminal syndicate organized groups, which have of course increased in Canada, So the fact that they have and are increasing in Canada is a massive point, of course, of contention. Vis-a-vis, of course, all the appellations where we are now to take an action vis-a-vis the action which we can potentially take vis-a-vis these growing transnational criminal syndicate organized groups. And the RCMP dismantled October 25th of last year. It hasn't even been a year yet. They dismantled the biggest ever drug super lab in the history of Canada. Never ever has such a big seizure, and even guns they seized and other drugs, narcotics. But this mass fentanyl production right in Canada, brothers and sisters. So, hey, we were warned for years, especially during COVID by the RCMP, of this growing transnational criminal syndicate organized groups taking root in Canada. Right? That is something which has occurred. So now we see that we're designated as an unusual, an extraordinary threat by the United States. Is something which is alarming. It gives me goosebumps. Every time I discuss it, I get goosebumps on the body. Because it's not something which, this I did not predict. I predicted an international conflagration, but I did not predict the deterioration of relations with the USA at such a scale as we see it today. These relations have been going downhill and from bad to worse with the United States in the past months, and I did not predict the re-election of Donald Trump. I predicted a maybe. I said there's a chance of Donald Trump getting re-elected. Right? I did not predict a necessary re-election of Donald Trump. I would have voted for Biden, Kamala, myself, right? Biden, or I would have voted for Biden or Kamala. So I did not predict Donald Trump's re-election, but now we have to do everything possible, and I believe my theory is best. So now I'm going to discuss the DMAA a little bit. What is the DMAA? Direct Military Assistance in Action. The DMAA, the Direct Military Assistance or Action, or vice versa, action or assistance or assistance in action, is a theory, is a protocol, is a frame of reference for work vis-a-vis NATO towards other member countries who are not non-NATO. So we got 32 member countries, including Canada, United States, and 30 Europeans. Sweden is the newest one, the 32nd. Before October 7th, I was advocating for Israel and Mexico to join, respectively, as the 32nd and 33rd. 32nd and 33rd countries to join this collective military security alliance, who has invoked Article 5 only once in history. In its 75-year history, September 11th was the only invocation, as I'm calling for the perpetual imperial union to be, of course, advocating on September 11th. On September 11th. So, of course, that is all the situational complexes of where we are now, with the dynamics. So, of course, and personally, I don't remember personal September 11th, my life personally, but from what I wrote in journals, I was in high school and they let us out. Here in Canada, Quebec, I was in high school, I guess, in 2001, September. So that was the only one. So the DMAA is related to NATO. It's a framework of reference and is a protocol to be ASAP, starting today with my discussion of it, installed and taken into account by all NATO leaders. LL, DMAA, direct military assistance or action, direct military action or assistance. The DMAA, direct military action or assistance. So it could be either or. And in parentheses to that four-letter acronym DMAA, direct military assistance or action or assistance, there's a C, standing for consequences. One of the consequences could potentially be foreign powers, governments, financing transnational criminals, organized groups, hand in hand by the mass covert financing by secret police, secret covert police, financing, of course, by the secret covert police, financing these covert activities. Covert activities. So, of course, the mass financing thereof can occur by us having undertaken DMAA, direct military assistance or action. It has nothing to do with humanitarian. Thank you to my anonymous friend, whom, when I discussed this theory, philosophy, she had mentioned that how, certain neurotypicals might have certain questions and certain propositions about it, and I guess even misinterpretations. So, to be clear, it has nothing to do with food aid, humanitarian aid, providing sanitation, providing food security, providing ailments to nourish, or bandages, or things for health. Humanitarian aid, it's military. D, direct military. MM stands for military, A for assistance, and the other A for action, or vice versa. It could be action or assistance, or it could be both. Right, so it can be both. Assistance is just, for example, Ukraine, and this is vis-a-vis. This has nothing to do with Article 5, which was invoked only once. This has with NATO countries, specific individual nation states within NATO, or NATO as a collective. For example, taking part in strikes in Afghanistan, or against ISIL, or in Yugoslavia, Serbia, post-Yugoslavia, or Libya, Syria, versus ISIL, Iraq, and recently Ukraine, because Ukraine was not part of NATO, so Article 5 could have not been invoked and was not invoked because Ukraine was not part of NATO. However, we had chosen to assist NATO countries and NATO as a bloc to assist by providing munitions, even Canada, military assistance. military assistance. And because, of course, also the Taiwan question is in parallel, Russia, China's secret services and criminal groups in parallel with the government can finance transnational criminal syndicate organized groups here, hacking groups to mass flood the streets with fentanyl, and support such of that transnational super lab, which was dismantled just last year by the RCMP. And look where it's the problem has got us with our best ways with the USA. So that's why my way to fuse the RCMP and FBI and the Imperial SSD Legion Imperial Police Force of the 63 of the Republic, perpetual citizens, let it be. My protocols initiatives, of course, are philosophical in nature. Some, of course, of my workout training program system, aka the General War Integrated Total Body Training System, which I created back in 2019, would be a protocol for the RCMP and the FBI, and of course the Dragon Army, which I've been calling for years, to be financed and of course installed as a mass PPP, public-private partnership, and of course mobilized from existing institutions and organizations that exist within the framework of the 63, the NATO, NORAD, NATO Collective. So the DMAA, Direct Military Assistance and Action, is only strictly when it relates to the dynamics between non-NATO member states. As it relates to NATO's action vis-a-vis the involvement in conflicts between NATO member states. So it's a theory, it's a protocol which has to be consulted. Animus in consultio liber deliberatus. Just like the motto of NATO is, in deliberate, a mind in unfettered deliberation. A mind in unfettered deliberation. The motto is in Latin, right? Animus consuelos liberus, right? Animus consuelo deliberatus. Animus consuelos deliberatus. Animus consuelos deliberatus liber. Right? So that has the motto, the kind of four-word phrase, the motto of NATO. So we have to implement this DMAA. Now we have, of course, to implement this DMAA, this direct military assistance and action, which we have, of course, to get now, of course, to get it due and to get it now, to beyond the consequential, to get now, of course, the deliberate, of course, where we are now, to be consummate about all our energies and faculties and all our strengths and the potential weaknesses and vulnerabilities, which, of course, the DMAA might enable, might enable us to do, So might be that enabling of these transnational criminal syndicate organized groups to, of course, take root and be financed, of course, by these foreign actors, which, of course, these foreign actors can be financed by secret police or, of course, by secret services such as the Ministry of State Security or the FSB of both Russia and China respectively. That's why my protocols for NORAD, NATO, the 63 first and foremost best, and of course the establishment of NATO as a concordium, of course, can be elongated in my protocols to include the whole NATO countries, the 32 countries within NATO. But first and foremost for Canada and United States, and then we take it from the empire to see, of course, where we can move it right here, because we're the new world. We're a new civilizational complex, Quebec, Canada, United States, which is not totally divorced, but is distinct from Western civilization. Is not totally divorced, but is distinct from Western civilization. So that is one of my philosophies, and not just a philosophy, but a belief. It's a philosophical belief rather than a theory. We are a collective civilizational complex, or what I call a civilizational complex, a new emergent one which is not totally divorced from Western civilization, but we have our distinctions. And now I gotta be watching it because it's a bit muddy here and I'm in the mud, and I'm going down the mountain because I'm heading back home to Essen and do what I do in emails and geopolitics, because I'm a few hours away from my place. So I'm gonna go back to the Dragon's Lair, came, saw the moon, my mistress, and got hungry, and I guess got a bit horny on the way. So gonna go do that, eating and masturbation and email checking and geopolitics, those four activities. One of it gonna be masturbation, of course, and I'm not sexually frustrated. If I would be, I would discuss it. Back to geopolitics, back to now basically we're gonna discuss the DRT, the debt refusion theory, as I go down, of course. this step by step here in the progress to get it going on that step by step. And of course we're gonna appellate to get a step by step to get going out safely and prudently into the light from the darkness, because it's a steep, it's somewhere where I'm now, you can't really see it because it's dark. It's where in the past videos, of course, I of course warn people not to if they don't know the area, to be careful and to bend their knees, because it's very steep. It's of course steep, of course, where we got to get doing like that. And that's something where we have to appellate, you know, to get that congregation and to get all the appellation where we are now, inside of course the sphere of our prudence and the sphere of our capabilities now, to be appellated where we are in the situational awareness of all the domains that I am in the wilderness. So the DMAA, our assistance or action, has consequences, so we have to discuss it more in depth, but we have to deliberate in consequence and have even a vote whether we undertake action. Action is, for example, bombing. NATO planes bombardment, you know. NATO planes. So NATO planes bombarding, of course, NATO taking action such as in Libya, direct action or assistance can also be problematic, because it opens us to potential vulnerabilities, and these vulnerabilities can of course be exploited in such a manner where these vulnerabilities are exploited. And if we take the direct military action or assistance vis-a-vis a conflict that is non-NATO member countries, so without the Article 5 being invoked, which has been invoked only once, then that has a consequence, and the consequence could be the financing, of course, of transnational criminal syndicate organized groups to, of course, have their nefarious activities increase. In Canada, for example, it could be Russia financing covertly transnational criminal syndicate organized group, because we had to undertake direct military assistance vis-a-vis Ukraine. Of course, we provided arms and armaments. Of course, we provided armaments and, of course, arms to get, of course, on the go with that, and, of course, to get, of course, the arms inside their matters and the prudently availability, of course, to get it on the go. So it's something which they have to be consequently, you know, so it is something which of course they had to be on the go, you know. So of course they had, of course, the valuations and the deliberation, of course, of their rock and roll ideas and ideations, of course, to be protruded and to be, of course, to get now in all this affairs where we are now to XYZ, and of course the situational affairs where we are now, protruding that we're going west. So now we're gonna head back west. Is when we go back west now. It's just something which we need to do, but that is just something which we got to get on the appellation on that. So that is just something what we got to be doing with the situational financing of the appellation to get now, you know, to get XYZ, you know, so to get it on the doers and the thinkers, and of course those, of course, who are involved in the production, distribution of food, with that, to get it for the appellation where we are integrated fully in our manners to take action or to undertake assistance vis-a-vis. It's not just Ukraine, of course, it's other countries, it's for the future as well, right, as a frame of reference, as a theoretical framework, you know. It's also a theoretical framework. But it's not just a theory, because it's a working tool. It's actually a working tool as well, the DMAA. So now we're going to get back the DRT, detrofusion theory. Going to explain it, discuss the DRT, pay attention. We have four main problems. Canada, United States, which affect the majority of the population. That's why my DRT theory, the detrofusion theory, has to be implemented. The DRT, detrofusion theory, of course, includes monetary integration theory, the MIT. Monetary integration theory is, of course, the theory which was implemented in the European Union in the 90s. It was the theory which was implemented in the 90s. The MIT monetary integration theory was implemented, of course, in the 90s in the European Union, as, of course, the theory to create, and they did. They destroyed the national currencies, the national central banks. They don't have national central banks. Germany, Italy, Belgium, France, they have the ECB, which functions as a multinational central bank. So in the 90s, long ago, 25 years ago, they implemented the monetary integration theory. They implemented the monetary integration theory. They implemented the monetary integration theory, the monetary integration theory, which was implemented back in the 90s. So inside my debt refusion theory, the DRT theory, is integrated the monetary integration theory, which is the theory which was the financial monetary theory, which was implemented in the European Union. So we got four main problems which are affecting us. The majority of the population, not all millionaires and billionaires are out there. So the majority of Canadian United States population, we suffer from these four main economic problems, of which one is the growing cost of living. The cost of bacon, cost of cheese, cost of bread, cost of butter, the cost of living. My wafers went up, the toothpaste I even see going up. Everyday things that we buy that we need on a daily basis, especially food items, the eggs, the bacon, the meat, the bread, the sausage, all these things, even fruits are going up, have been going up, right? And it seems that it is now stopping. It keeps going up. Even coffee is going up. Chocolate is going up, right? So all these things is going up. Cost of living. The parallel, this is one of the four problems. It can be in whatever order. The growing cost of living parallel to the rents are going up. My rent also went up this year. It has been for several years. I'm not going to complain because in my case, it's a small percentage. It's even less than what is allowed here by regulations in Montreal, like Hawk Island. Of course, between $6 and $10, he went up. Between $6 and $10. He went up between $6 and $10. Between $6 and $10. And of course, the other one is between $6 and $10. The other one is the stagnation of the salaries. The stagnation of the salaries, the stagnation of the salaries. The stagnation of the salaries, parallel of course to the stagnation of the salaries, is the stagnation of the salaries, a big one though. And the growing cost of living, cost of rents are going up, stagnation of the salaries, and the credit card debt. Record-breaking credit card debt for both the United States and Canada. Both the United States and Canada. Even now somebody's swiping that credit card. Swipe. Swiping that credit card, getting more in debt even now from Montreal to San Francisco. Somewhere now in the world, well, the North American Collectif, Canada, United States, across the 63, somebody's getting more debt, has just maxed out his fourth credit card. Don't you start using the fifth one, because we're going to implement the DRT. So the DRT includes monetary integration theory. Here it is. We're going to take all the public and the private debt, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, my $10,000, your $10,000. We're going to convert it into US dollars. So add all my $10,000. I don't have credit cards myself. I have a credit bank. I have a credit line to the RBC. We're going to take all the credit line. Of course, we're going to convert it all up. We're going to convert it all up, convert it all up, convert it all up. And of course, we're going to take it all up. We're going to convert it all up to United States dollars, to the United States dollars. United States dollars. We're going to add it all with the United States dollars, because it has to be implemented in my DRT, debt refusion theory, has to be implemented binationally, both Canada and United States. And we're going to add it all up. That money, with all the money circulation, is going to create the new central bank, which of course we're going to create and call the Imperial Republic Central Bank, and we're going to issue the UE. U dot universal E dot exchange U dot UE. U dot universal E dot exchange U dot UE. The UE. U dot universal E dot exchange U.UE. The universal exchange is going to have the value of the US dollar. We're going to cap the interest of 10%, not more than 10%. With that money, we're going to rebuild the infrastructure, mass finance, tourism across the 63. Every equinox and a solstice, that is every time the season changes, we're going to get 4 seasons. We're going to get rid of the border. We're going to unite, and of course, and finance mass healthcare, finance people, citizens to workout, train, exercise, do my workout training program system. And of course, we're going to mass finance the rebuilding of the infrastructure. We're going to mass refinance the building of the infrastructure. Going to mass finance the rebuilding of our infrastructure. Going to create this UE, get rid of the border, fuse the FBI and the RCMP, create the 2 complementary government and cooperative institution, the Dragon Army, aka Imperium, integrated dance league, with it, the Imperial Security Service and Defense, the Legions of the Dragon. Every 63, we're going to have the Dragon's Lair in every of the 63, as we're going to fuse Canada, United States, going to finance, mass finance healthcare, mass finance citizens to work out, mass finance citizens to work out, mass finance citizens to train, to exercise, mass finance citizens to work out, mass finance citizens to train, mass finance citizens fitness, mass finance the rebuilding, of course, of new hydroelectric dams here. We're going to mass finance more hydroelectric dams building. We're going to build, of course, the army together, of course, get the North American integrated collective. We're going to mass finance tourism for when you're 16 and plus, and we're going to finance 4 days every 3 months. So basically every beginning of the new season, spring, summer, autumn, and of course winter. Of course, we're going to get it on the go, and we're going to get it on the go. So that's what we're going to be doing with that. We're going to mass finance that together, of course, now of the collective, and that's something which we're going to finance ourselves to be doing. The financing of food, transport, and housing anywhere across the 63, whenever any citizen of the Empire wants to go from Quebec to Florida, Quebec, New Brunswick, anywhere between the 63 states. We're going to mass finance that, and we're going to be for initiatives, of course, for the rehabilitation of the collective, of course, for that rehabilitation of the collective. That's what we're going to get doing with that, of course, XYZ, and that's what we have to be doing in the compromitant aspects of all the civilizational aspects where we are, to get doing on that, to get all that appellation where we are now, that is something where we are now, of all the situational aspects, and that is something which is going to foster a great imperial esprit de corps. We're going to get coast to coast, ocean to ocean, the imperial protocols, and of course, that's just something where we're going to have to be doing as soon as possible, the DRT, because we're on the verge, maybe tomorrow, a global financial collapse. Financial collapse, of course, begins tomorrow, and that is, of course, something where we have to be doing on that, and that is just something where we have to implement it ASAP. It's an urgency, it's an emergency. The DRT has to be implemented ASAP. That refusion tree, we're going to rebuild the infrastructure, construct those mass 44 tunnels, 44 subterranean city tunnels, where we're going to construct them 44 tunnels, 44 tunnels, mass tunnels, which are, of course, going to be implemented, of course, we're going to construct those. We have to, because it's in case of a thermonuclear war, we're going to get into golden hogdom. Something which we have to get doing on that golden hogdom. We're going to have to be implementing it, and going to have to get doing, on the go. So that's just something which we have to be implementing and do with that, in the transversal, of course, of the situational aspects where we do now, the DRT, the debt refusion tree, for the creation of the UE, for the creation, of course, of the universal exchange unit is something which we have to do. The U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot UE. The universal exchange unit, the U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot UE. The universal exchange unit has to be implemented. We have no choice, really, because of course, we're on the verge of a financial catastrophe, where we are now, to do and to appellate, when we got these resources, and we're going to put a lot of work to be done. The empire is going to be redone, rebuilt through the birth of it.